I'm here today with Sister Simone. Don't be shy, sis. And to reiterate a little bit, because you say you watch Sarnetta TV and the debates, and did you find them helpful to you?
Definitely, I definitely find them helpful. They introduce you to information that you probably never heard of before, and you can study and build on that for yourself, for your own enlightenment, and it's pretty good. I like it.
So you research after you go do research?
Yes, I research everything after anything I hear. I go and research it and find out for myself to see how accurate or see where the perspective is coming from, and I do research on all of that. Yep.
There you have it, family. Washington D.C. Any words you might want to give to Brother Sarnetta?
Oh yeah, man, I really like him. I like his network. I feel like it has really changed like news for black people and everything like that, and it introduces us to other information that probably we need to be knowing.
Most things we agree upon. So, you know, I mean, it's not really. I reviewed a lot of your work. I'm impressed. Rarely, you know that's rare.
Right.
Rarely do Nuwaubians ever get impressed because nobody studies Egypt to the extent that we do. But the only thing that we differ on is we study two different eras. You study more so the 46 dynasties. We push everything pre-dynastic, pre-proto-dynastic periods. That's how we like to kick it. That's how we like to kick it.
I'm gonna challenge you on that. So, first of all, that number 46 dynasties. Where do you get the number 46 dynasties? I think most people would say that there were 30 to 32 dynasties. 46 is a lot more dynasties.
It just depends on who's counting. You know what I mean?
So what?
That's based off of the average archaeological research, because that's another debate inside many in the community between all Kemetic scholars, Egyptologists, etc., whether it's 46, etc. So I use that number 46 not because it's deemed as fact. I'm using it as it's the common term. You know what
46 is not a common term, not at all. Most people would say that most people would say that there are 32 dynasties, and that is even including. You could even include the dynasty they call Dynasty Zero. You know, so clearly, right. So that is where most people will go. So 46 is a lot more.
Which dynasty do you most likely study on?
I couldn't even tell you that there was a.
When he talks, just collect.
Sure. So the question. Okay. So ask that question again so we can hear it.
I said, so which dynasty would you say that you most likely focus your attention on?
Because I'm a Kemetic historian, I can't say that there's a dynasty that I focus more on than any of the dynasties. I'll say to you, let me answer it this way though. I spend a lot of time focusing on those dynasties that come before Dynasty 25. And for those of you at home that aren't as familiar, the primary thrust of ancient Kemet is an African one. For the most part, all of the rulers and most of the important people of ancient Kemet are Africans, for the most part. But there is a period where foreign people become so entrenched in Kemet. Do what you gotta do. That become so entrenched in Kemet that after Dynasty 25, we begin to see foreign people primarily on the throne. And so I focus on dynasties primarily before Dynasty 25, right? Dynasty 25, by the way, is the Cushitic dynasty. Sometimes we call it the Nubian dynasty, but Nubian is actually probably not an ancient word. So we call that land Kush or Cash. And so Dynasty 25 was the Cushitic resurgence. It's when the Nubian people come forward from the south and they put Kemet back into order. So I study things that happen after that. So I'd say they did. It wasn't, listen, you know, this is the thing. We have to recognize, sometimes people will text me or call me or reach me and say, brother, why did Kemet fall? And my first response is, every civilization falls. There is no civilization that will last at all time. Now, if you want to look at it in its proper perspective, Kemet was a powerful empire, powerful nation for over 3,000 years. There is no nation on earth that has that kind of longevity. And so when we focus on Kemet's fall, we're not necessarily recognizing exactly what Kemet did. And I say that to say that when the Nubians come forward and they put Kemet back into order, we know that it doesn't last extremely long. But we're talking about a much longer time than we might think. You know, our history as Africans is so extensive that sometimes we could just run over or ignore 500 years. That's how long our history is, right? And so that's one of the things I think we need to recognize. The United States has only been around for a little over 200 years. You know whose books those are. You should recognize them, brother. Here, wait, let me.
It looks familiar.
Yeah,
those look real familiar.
Are you surprised that I have some of your father's work?
I'm not surprised. This is my father.
See?
Well, tell a story like you said. You came up and you was in the Nuwaubain nation.
Well, there wasn't in the Nuwaubain
not in it, but you was around it.
Let me explain it this way. As I was actually a young man, I'm talking about during my high school phase, I began to realize that the information that I had been told, that the way that the world had been described to me was described to me essentially by the European, by the Tamhu. And so I began to put myself on a quest to really get information about our people, right? And it was at that time that I began to realize that some of the most adulterated information, some of the most information that had really been altered for the benefit of the European had been information that I had received on a religious level. I was Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic. And so it was at that time that I began to say that maybe what I knew about the very nature of humanity, the nature of the universe, the nature of the divine was wrong, or at least was tampered with, was addressed or was controlled by Europeans so that they would be able to control us. So on my search, I started looking at other groups that I felt were trying to bring corrective information to our people. And that is when I came across much of the information that your father was putting out. I remember as a young man getting brochures, getting booklets, getting information, and holding them as sacred because he was telling me something I hadn't heard. And so that was really when my first information, my first awareness of your father's work came. And that was, I guess that's still in the Ansarul Allah period, when I think that's probably when it was.
A lot of Egyptology. Because we a lot of Egyptology within the Ansarul Allah.
Well, what I saw was mostly Islam in those days.
No, you saw a depiction of Islam.
Well,
the prayers, you saw the prayers, you saw things, but behind the scenes, and this is why the Ansars was actually one of the most hated groups out of all of Islam in New York City. And the reason why is because we included a lot of practices that was Egyptian, because my father originally started teaching Egyptology, but he reverted to Islam because black people were in Islam. And then when people came to his, because he never did lectures, he only did question and answer forums. So when people came to his question and answer forums, what would happen is they would only be asking him, being the fact that Islam was the hottest thing at the time, they would only be asking him about Islam. And he would have to constantly bridge a gap. You know what I mean? Depending on who you're teaching, you always have to bridge a gap between whatever they're currently studying into. So if a Christian comes to you, then you can take them Christian to Egyptology transgression, Islam to Egyptology transgression. So the Ansarul Allah community, we have mainly Egyptian practices. We had a lot and inherited a lot of Islamic practices, but with my father being a Sudanese by descendancy, that was always his origins. But we'll get into that further in the conversation. But my current question is, I want to know the topic of discussion.
Right. Well, I'm not sure if there is a topic. I wanted to have a sit down and talk with you about questions I had about the Nuwaubain tradition, about the Nuwaubain movement. Sure. I've always had questions about it. There's some things that I've seen that have inspired me at times. There have been some things that have disturbed me at times. There's been some things that have confused me at times. And so I want to talk to you about it all. Sure, this is not supposed to be a discussion. This isn't a debate, family. You see Brother Jabari Osaze in debates. That's not what this is. This is a discussion. I'm going to ask him at times some pointed questions, but that's just simply so that we can get some clarity So I don't want you to think that I'm here to try to attack or fight this young man who is my brother. That's not what I'm here for. But I have some questions that I think I would love to get answers to, and I can't think of anyone better to get the answers from than you at this time. So, well, I don't have access to your father. So, and to be fair, some of this conversation I would have liked to have with him. To be fair, that's true. That's absolutely true. But as someone who is coming forth in the Nuwaubain community and in many ways representing the Nuwaubain community, I thought that you would be a good person to ask those questions. So let me start by asking, maybe this is en route to what your question is. What role do you play in the Nuwaubain community these days? What role do you play?
I'm also on the front lines of the Nuwaubain Nation. I deal with more of our external situations, such as these, whether it be promoting the nation, speaking, and constantly representing the nation in any form of fashion. As far as status, my status is really the title, because my name is not Prince. Prince is a title. I just use Prince York as cliche. My full name is Amanubi Ramasas. That's my full first name, Amanubi Ramasas. But I use Prince because that's my title in the nation, so I move as a prince should.
So, gotcha.
Yeah, so not as far as, because some people take Prince into royalty, women. No, when you're really a prince, you're a real prince, you're doing work consistently for the nation, such as assisting. We recently built a school in Liberia called New Hope. So for orphans, etc. So different things like that. I run campaigns like that, and in some cases I sit in the seat of my father as a physical representation, not as him holding his status, but as a physical representation of him, like as of now. Whereas he cannot be accessed, I would be the source to that source.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. Thank you. And congratulations. Because I know that must be difficult. I know you're a young man. And I know that I don't know if I'd be able to do those things when I was your age. So you've been doing some powerful stuff. You know what I mean?
Born in a much different way of life. You know what I mean? A lot of people, and side note to tell you, every brother in the community underestimates me. They tell me all these years they've been studying. Right. They say, I've been studying 20 years, 30 years. I'm like, bro, I've been studying since birth. I was never Christian. I was never Muslim. I was never any of these things. Right. We've been studying since birth. I've been speaking 4 languages since I was a child. So whereas my entire train of thought has only been this. And a quote that I commonly say is, I say, when children was reading Dr. Seuss, those books you holding right there, I was reading that when I was like this.
Oh, you're reading these? I thought you were calling those Dr. Seuss.
Nah.
I was about to say, you about to get in trouble.
I'm saying when children are reading different children's books,
right?
We weren't reading that. We was reading our own books. My father even wrote a series of children's books with Egyptology, Sumerian sciences, etc., all intertwined within it. So it gave us constantly enhancing the children of our community, constantly enhancing our minds. So that's why I said I've been teaching since I was 9 years old on our land, because we built pyramids, etc., on our land. My first class, I remember, is I had to explain, and this is Savior's Day. Savior's Day is a Nuwaubain New Year. So we used to call it Savior's Day. Now we call it Nuwaubain New Year. But on Savior's Day, which is June 26th, which is also actually my birthday as well, I was able to go up on the land and speak in front of over 30,000 people. At 9 years, almost peed on myself, and I had to explain what a Nuwaubain is. And I am happy to be on Sinetta TV. I'm happy to be on the platform in general, because it's like history repeats itself. Now again, more than 15 years later, I'm back on the platform once again explaining what Nuwaubu is. You see what I'm saying? Because a lot of people truly do not grasp it.
Right, right. One of the things that you've even said today is you've used the word Egyptian. Or Egypt, and I know that at one point, I don't know if this is still the case, but at one point I know that you all use the word Egypt with an I instead of a Y, as it's usually rendered in English. Talk to me about why you use that term.
What you have, why do I use the term Egypt, or why do you have an I instead of a Y?
Both.
Okay, which one first?
Whichever one you like.
Okay, well, reason why you see sometimes we write the Y, the I instead of the Y, is because when you study hieretics and you study, like, Nuwaubians, we're taught to be linguists, even the ones who are not as well versed, because I'll say now, I speak multiple languages, but I'm not a linguist. I'm well versed and I'm able to converse in numerous languages, but I'm not a linguist, to be a master linguist. But one thing you'll learn throughout Semitic and, well, the older Semitic and pre-Semitic languages.
Semitic or Sumerian?
Semitic. When you're dealing with Semitic languages and pre-Semitic languages, you'll learn something about, it's called an interchangeable sequence. And an interchangeable sequence is when vowels are able to be interchanged. And we took the Y out of Egypt. Why? Simply, and it wasn't no serious science about it. It was simply to differentiate ourselves and individualize ourselves from everybody else. That's really what the main purpose was. And plus, you know, I is the ninth letter in the alphabetic system, and Nuwaubians hold to a lot of numerology, so we deal with the number 9 as one of our, what we would call a supreme number.
The reason why I ask is because I'm not sure you're aware that Egypt is actually not a Kemetic word, and that the term Kemet, there are several names for the land of that we know that sometimes is rendered Egypt wrongfully, but
we never refer to the land as Egypt.
Well, but
referred to as far as
but let me ask unfurl the question so you can answer it even more in depth manner. Egypt is a term that is real, that really comes to us from the Greeks.
Yes, I agree.
You know, when they come into Kemet, they don't speak the language, and it is likely that they pass a city, and that city's today in English we might render it something like Het Ka Ptah, right? The house of the soul of Ptah, and it's in northern Kemet.
Yes.
And so as they go to that important city, they begin to call the entire land by that name. But because they don't speak the language, it's believed that it gets mushed, smashed, because they don't speak the language. And so that is the term that we made. That's how we get to the term Egypt, when in actuality, that's not a term that any of our ancestors, when I say ancestors, I'm not talking about physical ancestors, I'm talking about African ancestors would have used. And that's, I don't even know that's for you. That's more for the Hebrew Israelites who say, Jabari is not genetically a Kemite. So, I want to make that distinction when we talk about Egypt. In some ways, one of the reasons why I don't use the term very often is because it is a Greek word, and I have found that when you go to any museum around the world, and you know, I don't know if you know this, I do tours. I've been doing tours of 5 museums around the United States, and I've led now 14 tours to Kemet itself. I've been involved with taking, at this point, nearly 3,000 people, over 3,000 people to Kemet, people of African descent to Kemet. And so it's been something I've done extensively. And one of the things I find most interesting is when you look at the descriptions of the pieces that you're seeing, of the places that you go to, you will often see some pretty decent translations of text. And when they get to names, they'll give you a Greek name. When they get to names of places, they'll often give you Greek names. They'll give you Arabic names. And our ancestors believed that in order for them to continue to live, you had to continue to say their names. I truly believe that one of the reasons why we may still be catching hell in Harlem in 2017 is because we are not saying the names of our ancestors. If our ancestors believed that they could not live if we didn't say their names, then according to their ideology, they cannot get involved in the fray.
Exactly.
So that is one of the fundamental reasons why I question the use of the word Egypt. And so is there a reason why you think that it's better than Kemet, for example?
Well, one, Nuwaubians have never used the term Kemet. The reason why we use the word Kemet is because we know it comes from Hebrew origin, dealing with the word Chem.
You and I are going to have a real argument on that. I heard you say that on Sonnetta's platform.
Yeah, dealing with the word Chem, which is can be termed in English, in a more English phrase as ham, etc. But as far as, no, we don't feel that the word Egypt is more, I would say, more favorable than the word Kemet or Kamari, etc. No. We utilize the word Egypt for, like I said before, more so as far as promotion and simple grass concepts for people in that time. Because now we wouldn't refer to that way.
When you say simple grass people in a time, what do you mean?
When you're dealing with certain time periods, people like right now, you put Kemet on top of your house, you know what I mean? And you put the lights up that says Kemet, most majority of people would overstand, okay, yeah, Kemet. When you go further back, where knowledge was lesser and lesser accessible, then some people the masses of people within the 50s and the 60s of the African American community in America did not even have a clue that Egyptians was black. You had few but the masses did not. Whereas now in 2017, it's common knowledge. Yeah, okay, I agree that the Egyptians were black. Yes, so depending on the era. But as far as the internal workings, and I'm sure you see the books that you've read, so I see that you would have a great grasp over that. We've always referred to ancient Egypt as Ptah, Maye, Oreye, or Tamare. That's how we've always referred to it. We never really referred to it as Kemet. I've seen my father mention it, I believe, in 3 different books, the term Kemet, and referring to it as such. But Egypt, no, we don't favor the word Egypt. We utilize the word Egypt for the basis of the understanding and overstanding of the people of that time period. A lot of people forget Dr. Malachi Z. York has been in jail for over 16 years. So the mindset from 2000 to now has completely changed. So now that our people are more advanced, we're critiquing old things of his, not his new stuff. So the books, like those books there, the books you have there are over 25 years old, both of them.
But then, brother, then I mean, you were on Sonetta's platform and you're using the word Egypt. This platform knows the word Kemet. I understand that there are people who are not familiar with the word Egypt. You'll even look at my book and you'll see that there are chapters that reference Egypt, right? And then in parentheses, I'll say Kemet, and then slowly I drop the word Egypt.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I get that there are people who still need to be brought into knowledge, but I think that we have to be really disciplined about bringing people into knowledge, because if they think that that is where they should stay, then there's a problem. And I wouldn't have tampered with the word Egypt. I would have just, for example, changing a letter from I to Y. When you change things like that, it's almost like you're taking ownership of it. I would rather use it as a title. I have a forthcoming book that's going to have Egypt on the cover, but on the first page it's going to say Kemet, and I'm not going to use Egypt anymore. You know what I mean? So I get that many of our people still have to be brought into knowledge, but I really think that we have to try to get to a point where we're doing it rather than continuing to give them crutches. You know what I mean? So I have a concern about that. You mentioned, for example, one of the words you didn't use the word Kemet is because it comes from the Hebrew. I heard you say that. This is one of the reasons why I asked Sa to sit down with you. Because as someone who has been studying this for a really long time, I think that it's one of those things that we need to really be clear about. In fact, to some degree, it's partially why I've been debating with some brothers who are in the Hebrew Israelite tradition. I think we have to be very clear that there is no Kemetic term that comes from a Hebrew term. That's almost like saying the great-great-great-great-grandchild gave birth to the great-great-great-great-grandparent. It doesn't work that way. So the Hebrew language is a later language from a much younger people. The Kemetic language is one of the oldest written languages in the world. Kemet is a nation that gives the world civilization. We should not allow anyone to connect that to Ham. I understand that the later Hebrew people connected it to Ham, right? I believe that when they said Cam, they were trying to reference the Kemetic people. I agree with that. But for us to take away our sacred terms because people who are younger don't understand them, be careful with that. I mean, so the word Kemet does not come from a Hebrew language. Hebrew is newer. I would love to be able to say that the Hebrew people have their Genesis, if they have a clear Genesis, it's in 700 BCE. The Kemetic community, you know, we're talking about a community that has an existence of likely over 3,000 years earlier. And I know that 3,000 is a number that some folks don't really grasp. Think about this. Now, the time that they'd like to say that Jesus Christ walked earth. Now, you may know that I have argued that Jesus is actually a mythological character. And that's not to say anything negative about Jesus, but I think that is the truth. And the truth is not always something that makes you feel comfortable. They would like to say that Jesus the Christ came to earth around 0 BCE and that he might have died around 33. They'll say AD. In fact, AD means something like Anno Domini. So Yeah, I'm gonna give it to you in a second, real quick second. So I want to be clear that if you say that Cam or Kemet comes from the Hebrew language, that there's a challenge. That's where we were going. So here, you want to respond to?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, you stated the Egypt with the I takes an ownership of it. Okay. Well, first and foremost,
Ownership of the word Egypt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like this. Anytime you're dealing with an ideology, the key word in ideology is idea. And no one has the right to dictate anybody's ideas. So when you're dealing with the marketing and promotion or one teacher's teaching strategy versus another teacher's teaching strategy, there's no debate or discussion there. If you want to call your school the Sacred Arts of Kemet, and this brother chooses to call his school the Sacred Arts of Egypt, as long as whatever marketing strategy works for whomever is spitting it, is fine with me. As far as altering the words and the etc., I mean, the ancient Egyptians constantly altered words continuously. I've watched numerous of your videos and I've heard you refer to Anubis as Anpu, whereas I would refer to Anubis as Anabu, where we both can agree that's the same person. We both can. So you're going to say Anabu is not Anpu as far as referring to Anubis? But let me
get to another question. Do you read the Kemetic language?
I do.
So then how would you get Anabu?
Because what you have to, okay. What languages do you speak?
Let's be really clear. I speak English. I read a bit of the Kemetic language. I do not want people to believe I'm an expert in the Kemetic language. In fact, in my team, my wife, Anika Aisha Daniels Osaze, and for Kama'at, as some of you have heard of her, she is actually much stronger in the Kemetic language. That is her expertise is the language, right? And my expertise has been the history. And so we work well together there. But I do read, right? And so I'm not sure where you would get Anabu from, but I'll say to you, Anabu is better than Anubis, right? Because the language doesn't say Anubis, but we're talking about Egypt. Right?
But what I'm showing you is the word, when you're dealing with Anpu, okay, I always have to have these conversations, but the thing is, people don't, when you don't speak the languages, especially the dialects that are birthed from these languages, and you don't truly understand them, it gives you a difficult grasp on certain things that I say, because we're translating from Medu, for example, from Meduneta to English, from Spanish to English, from Latin to English. And what's constantly forgotten is you got over a 2,000-year plus gap of dialects that rained down into formulating what we now speak today. So being that dialect connection, through that is how you study linguistics. You don't study linguistics simply by a word or terms that we assume is correct based on the English language, because the English language has 26 letters, whereas Arabic has 28, Nuwaubain has 40. If you go to the Dungbawi tribes of southern Sudan, they have 56. So, and a letter is actually just a symbol. The ideogram is the symbol that represents the sound itself, and in some cases, mainly in the English language, they make the actual structure of the letter to represent that sound as it travels, etc. So with that understanding of linguistics, you're going to learn something about interchangeable sequence. And interchangeable sequence is different consonants and vowels that can be interchanged consistently throughout language. This is a fact. Interchangeable sequence such as a B and a P can be interchangeable, an M and an N, a B, R, and a L, a G, a C, a GH, a K, G, SH, PF, KH, H, A, E, I, O, U, and Y are all interchangeable letters. And the best way to get someone to grasp that is when you're dealing with the word, you'll see the Greeks will term it whore. And then we as Kemetic scholars, for the sake of this conversation, we as Kemetic scholars, we would term it as har, and then somebody may say it's haru, which later became hero or hiru, etc. Or man, it just constantly, because vowels are interchangeable. You'll go if you've traveled Africa. I haven't met many brothers in the community because I've traveled. So many brothers haven't traveled. So it's good that you have traveled Africa. I'm sure you can hear it in dialect, especially anybody who's traveled down now. Have you been into North Sudan?
Yeah.
Okay, so you definitely hear the dialect difference between you definitely should hear the dialect difference when traveling.
People in North Sudan are speaking Arabic.
They speak in Funk. Okay,
But most of the people in North Sudan are speaking Arabic.
They're speaking fluent Fusha, which is the most classical form of Arabic, yes. But when you're dealing with the terms and the pronunciations, I'm only dealing with terms I'm not talking about Meduneta right now, I'm just talking about terms and pronunciations of the basic words. You'll notice that words sound different by the dialect. So, for example, you in aspect to, let's say, a Spanish or a Mexican descendant person, you may say America, they may say America. They wouldn't spell it with a D. They would not spell it with a D at all, but they would pronounce it with a D based on the dialect of their native origin language. So in that sequence, it becomes an interchangeable sequence for them in benefit of them. And then the only person who would win that conversation of linguists would be who is the older language. Even in Meduneta, you will see it'll show you a depiction of the Y, and it'll say Y can be this or this.
No disagreement.
And in that science where Y can be this or this, that's mistranslation. And a lot of people get lost in the trans of translation because it's 2,000 to 3,000 year gaps. So we're applying English literary systems onto a Kemetic literary system, and when we combine those two, we find ourselves confused and we have mispronunciations. Like we as Nuwaubians disagree with the translation to a word being netter. We say no. We say netter is not our translation. We would say the proper net translation is nathar. Is it the same word? Yes. Does it have the same meaning? Yes. But it's two different what? Pronunciations of the word.
But I want to be clear that I don't take issue with you I don't take issue with you translating the glyphs differently. If you're translating the glyphs and you translate the words differently than someone else does, because the Kemetic language does not transcribe many of its vowel sounds. There in some ways there is a gap. There is a gap for us to actually understand how a word was actually pronounced, not read, but pronounced, as opposed to how we are pronouncing it, right? But I think that what we have to do is we have to say, these are the principles we're using. This is how we're going to try to pronounce something. If you said Anabu, I would ask you to show me in the glyphs why you say Anabu. And you know what? To be really honest with you, I'm less uncomfortable with you saying Anabu than I am with you saying Egypt. Because Anabu is at least based on the glyphs. It's based on the language. Egypt is not.
Well, I never said Egypt.
And so, no, but that's where this conversation starts. So that's what I'm trying to say.
We both agree that I never said Egypt was.
That Egypt was what?
I never said Egypt was the ancient word. I never said
No. And I know you're not. I'm saying that what we have to do is if we're I'm getting to it. What we have to do is we have to get to the point where we're giving our people an understanding of who they were and who they are. And so when we filter that through the understanding of younger peoples, we're not giving them a true understanding of who they are. And so that's why I'm challenging you on the word Egypt. And I'm not simply talking about your promotion, because if you look at the text, newer and older, you're going to see Egypt all throughout it. It's not like it's just on the front and then you give them a corrective issue. You're using the word Egypt.
No, we do give them a corrective.
I'm saying all throughout your text. Let me ask you this. You know the text better than I do.
Of course.
All throughout your text, aren't you using the word Egypt with an I? And if you are, why are you?
Once again, referring back to the word Egypt with an I, we as Nuwaubians, we refer to the word Egypt not as an ancient term, never said it was an ancient term, never beat up the word Kemet in any form or fashion. We utilize the word Egypt with an I simply as our teaching method. See, that's what I'm saying. When you're dealing with a teaching method of the same,
I don't understand what you mean.
Well, I'm gonna explain it. When you're dealing with a teaching method of the same science, there's no debate. You can't say, well, I'm a teacher and I teach first grade, and you're a teacher and you teach third grade. But whereas I'm teaching this person first grade and I'm dealing with first grade, because my father targeted, and everybody in this room, I'm pretty sure can agree, that his target attention was on directly dealing with his key, and you've read it, is breaking the spell on blacks. And in his mind, he says the way the spell that is on black people is religion. We have to stop worshiping fictitious gods and things and creations that came of us but not from us. That's his method. So where he's targeting religious people, where they are using and you have to stand as fact, being at the fact that you have read some of the pamphlets back in the day, and back in the day when my father was putting out pamphlets, he didn't use the word Egypt. He used the word Mizra, which is the Hebrew word referring to Egypt. Mizra or Mizraim.
That's just as bad as Egypt.
Okay, he's missing the point. The point is not, I'm going to get to it. The point is not about, okay, you are a Kemetic high priest. Your scholarship in that. You see what I'm saying? So me and you can use the word Kemet. When you said the word Tamahu, my eyebrow went. I said, oh, okay, we're about to have a good conversation. We can do that. With the first grader right there who's just now finding out Egyptians are black, we can smack them with the word Kemet now. That may be your strategy. But I'm saying as far as a teaching strategy, my father utilized saying, I'm going to use the word Egypt. Remember, Nuwaubians have an entire language. And our entire affirmation and information that we teach is all based upon self-independence from everything the Caucasian says, from every single Caucasian resource.
How could you say that if you're using the word Egypt?
I'm trying to explain it to you. You're missing a very valid point. I'm
hearing you, but I'm not hearing how A, B, and C. I'm not hearing how A and B get us to C. That's the challenge I have, because what I'm hearing, I know I've let you speak. Go ahead, finish.
So what the misconstruction is, you're saying we should not be using the word Egypt. I'm saying, first and foremost, you're referring to books 25 years ago, because his new books is not saying Egypt. And if you read anything from the ancient Egyptian order, which you probably haven't because you wasn't in the order, but you might have got your hands on something, if maybe, you'll see that he doesn't usually refer to it as Egypt in that book at all.
You just said ancient Egyptian order.
Because one more time. It's for the purpose of the people who do not overstand. People, my father, like, for example, you have the shrine of Ma'at. People who don't know who Ma'at is would not know what your shrine is about. They would have to make a presumption. And the first presumption that would come to their mind based on the symbolism that they see, whether it be the Ankh, Ma'at's wings, the sun disk, etc., their mind is going to, the people with that train of thought is going to say Egypt. So my father is not targeting, his target audience he was targeting getting religious people out of religion. Because Nuwaubians, we don't have a religion. So we about getting religious people out of religion. So we targeted religious people. So like I said, when we were teaching the Nubian Islamic Hebrew school, we referred to Egypt as Mizraim. Why? Because we were teaching the Hebrew people. So we had to teach them based on the word that they know. You can't, hold on, you can't go into
That's wrong.
But hold on. That would be wrong.
I understand. But that's wrong. That's like saying that you're going to teach a first grader.
What you're saying, exactly. What you're saying, exactly, that's a perfect example. Where you're dealing with a first grade, you got to teach them first grade information. Whereas my father, who's also a teacher, would say, I think Kemet going up into language and tones is third grade information. I'm not gonna give third grade information to a first grader. First grader, welcome. You just got out of religion. Here, let's learn about Egypt. Then once they get into learning about Egypt, then they learn language, translations, etc. And then it can go into Kemet. We can go into Tamaray. We can go into not the word Nubian, obviously. We'll go into the word Nuba or the Noba people from the northern parts of Sudan who help in pre-proto dynastic Egypt or Kemet. But we use the term for the purpose of the minds of the people who do not know Kemet. If you already see, Nuwaubians, like what could be presumed is out of this conversation by viewers, out of this conversation with Prince York's goal seeking to bring Brother Jabari over into the Nuwaubian nation? No. Why? Because based on my mindset, you're already a Nuwaubian because you're studying the science of ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, and that's what we study. Like I said when we first came in the room, I said I agree with, I would say 85% of almost everything, almost 85% of the things you say I agree with. Our only disagreements on my end is in terms of linguistics, and my only other disagreement is in terms of time periods. We like to refer back to the oldest because we say Africans in America are dealing with an identity crisis. So the only way we can truly identify ourselves as one African nation is if we go to the oldest out of everybody. If we say, okay, we're just going to deal with African nations, then you'll be from Zimbabwe and I'll be from Tanzania. But if we go to the oldest pre-dynastic and proto-dynastic periods, then we can say, okay, we were all from here, then we spanned out, etc. So, but it's only but to bring it back around, I'm ending it, it's only based on a teaching strategy. Your strategy is hit them with Kemet straight in the face.
No.
And well, I know it's not, because you said that your book says Egypt on it.
Right.
So what my father's strategy was, utilize the word Egypt for the people who understand the word Egypt. Kemetic people understand the word Egypt, and people who don't understand Kemet understand Egypt. So Egypt became a good bridge. But when you come inside the teachings, then you'll see we don't use the word Egypt at all.
Okay, let me say that you have to, and I'm going to move on from this because I want us to just speak about this. But I think that my point is that we have to be very cautious when we're giving our people crutches. We have to make sure that they still understand they can walk, run, and fly. And so if you continue to use, you were just using the word Egypt very liberally to this audience. This audience definitely knows the word Kemet. So that in many ways is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you're still using the word Egypt to this audience, then you've not clearly understood that the crutch is no longer necessary. Be very careful with that, because when we do that, what we end up doing is we leave our people at the feet of the Tamhu. We leave our people at the feet of the European instead of taking them back to their ancient language and their ancient understandings. Let me
90% of Nuwaubians are fluent.
Well, let me get to this. Before you do that, let's go someplace else. Now, I know you said Nuwaubians most of them are fluent in 4 languages, but here's a fundamental question that I think that a lot of people have. And let me say, when I say a lot of people, I want you to understand that as someone who's been part of the Kemetic community for nearly 30 years, I started my study at the Saraset Society. I was later initiated through the Shrine of Ptah, and now I'm a high priest and run the Shrine of Ma'at. Have interaction with Kemetic people all over the world. And so I see myself as part of a Kemetic community. They're not necessarily people who practice exactly the same things, and we're comfortable with that. In Kemet, we didn't all practice exactly the same things. So I don't have discomfort with not practicing exactly the same thing. But one of the fundamental things that I think marks many Kemetic houses, all Kemetic houses, is an appreciation of the Kemetic language. And so I've always been confused by the creation of another language. Well, creation, it's not an ancient language. I'm talking about Nuwaubic, right?
Nuwaubic is an ancient language.
It's an ancient language? Okay, well, I want to hear how you're going to say that, but I'm just not sure why a group that is part of the Kemetic tradition, and I believe you do believe that you're part of the Kemetic tradition, right?
No.
You don't?
No.
You don't see yourself as part of the Kemetic tradition?
I said that many times.
So maybe I'm confused, but you got Ra on the front of your hat, brother, and I'm confused. Yeah, I'm so confused. I'm confused. Explain to me how you see yourself and why you're not using the Kemetic language as much and you've created a new language.
Okay, once again.
A lot of questions there, I'm sorry.
Once again, let's start with the first question.
Okay.
The first question is, why are we not using the Medunetta? Nuwaubians definitely utilize the Medunetta, but we identify the Medunetta, one, as younger than the Nuwaubian, for first and foremost.
Younger?
Can I explain it? Younger than the Nuwaubian, and we also identify the Kemetic. We also identify the Medunetta or the Kemetic language as a duality, a multality, meaning a multitude of languages that was corresponding all at the same time via dialects. So, such as hieretics correlation to, hieroglyphs correlation to hieretics.
Those aren't different languages. Those are just different
dialects and written scripts. There are definitely different pronunciations, because when you deal, once again, back to the letter Y in the hieroglyph. In hieroglyphics, you have a letter Y, whereas in heretics, you don't have a letter Y. You have 2 different types of I. You have a hard. Hold on. Listen. You have a hard I and you have a light I. Whereas in English, they say I can make I, and it also can make I. In the Hieretics, it does not do that. In Hieretics, it's it's completely two different symbols. Each sound has its very own symbol, and you will see, and you agree with already, that in the Kemetic language, it says this can be this or this. There is no or this. It's an extra letter that has been removed from the language, and they're compiling it based on their English translation. So like I said before, don't get lost in the trans of translation. You have to understand the middle dialects in between the bridge, so therefore you can bridge the gap back to the proper translation. Now, to answer your second question, right? Your second question is, okay, how is it?
Just answering. I'm not even sure what you are. Which question were you answering?
I'm dealing. Right. The first question was dealing with what the correlation between different ancient language, because we were still, even though the conversation had moved on, we're still bridging off. All of this is based on the same thing, referring back to the Kemet term, where I said Kemet comes from Chem. And the Chem actually means black in same tree. Now, whether you want to say Chem came from Kemet, I can totally agree with that as well. The reason why is because we as Nuwaubians, we stay versatile until well studied, meaning we stay very optimistic until we have a truly grasp understanding. So I take your as of now opinion on as far as Chem and Kemet. And then I will do. Opinion? I take it's an opinion until proven is fact. I take so it's opinion, and I'll take it and until it's restudied by me, and I say, oh, I see what he's saying. Then I say, yo, let me get Brother Jabari. Thanks, bruh. I definitely see what you was talking about. Yeah, you absolutely correct. Until that is done on my end, then it would be an opinion. So I accept your opinion, and we as Nuwaubians, we try to stay as versatile as possible. We're able to take criticism, and in most of the cases, and Sinetta will tell you, we are the most criticized. And we are able to take criticism from all communities, and we study every single thing they question us on. And we come back harder and harder and harder each time. Thus, we've lasted so long. 54 years, over 1,500 books. We're part of every single sacred. To me, first and foremost, I think it disqualifies anybody studying Kemetic anything who's not in Masonry, being the fact that Masonry is an original Egyptian practice. And if you go in, please
don't go there yet.
Not yet. You want to hold that?
Yeah, that's the whole.
But you're not.
What am I talking about? Don't go there yet, because you're not answering the what we're talking about right now, and I want to address that, but we're gonna lose the rest of it, because this is a situation where I think that what you're doing is some of what you're saying is not factual.
Based on what?
I mean, you've said, for example, that hieratic and the hieroglyphs. By the way, those are all not Kemetic terms, but are different languages, different dialects.
Different dialects are the same.
That's not even true.
So what would you say?
They are different scripts.
So different forms.
Because you're writing to be able to write the hieratic, the highest form of
yes or no?
You cannot say that. You cannot say that, because the Kemetic language, the hieratic form, the highest form, really doesn't have letters.
Are you a linguist?
There are over 2,000 languages. I've studied languages for a very, very long time. I would not consider myself a linguist because my wife has a degree in linguistics. For me to sit here and say that I'm a linguist, in some ways, I would feel that would not be giving a full understanding of the study that she's done. And I'm sure that if she was, now Sa's not on Facebook Live anymore, but if you're on Facebook Live, Sa, your phone will be blowing up, because I think that some of what you said is just not factually correct. And I think that when we understand the facts, then we're able to make a better analysis. I know that what you've said, that what I've said is an opinion. I would maybe you should say it's an argument, because what I just said to you is not an opinion. I'm telling you it's a fact. I understand you have to research it. I'm not saying that you should just take what I say and just take it as fact. That wouldn't make any sense. Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. I agree with that. But I am saying it's not an opinion, it's an argument. And I think that what you have to do, but I want you to be really clear. I just want to make this point. I'm going to hand it right back to you. That with regard to the difference between hieratic and the most priestly form of the language, you're not talking about two languages at all. In fact, this is one of the reasons why.
You said two different dialects.
Dialects. You said both. You said languages and dialects. But I want you to tell you that.
You retracted the word language.
Okay, so you retracted it. So let me say they're not two dialects.
They are.
Let me be really clear. They're not two dialects either.
They are.
Okay, brother, I've been studying the Medu Neter longer than you've been alive. That is not a case. I'm telling you that is not true. And so I think you need to You're absolutely allowed to speak. I want you to speak. Please, go ahead.
You've been studying the metal nets longer than I've been alive. That is great. That's actually, I'm glad you decided to bring that into this conversation, because the books that we both study is longer than we've been alive. Pre-dynastic Egypt is longer than we've been alive.
You studied books on pre-dynastic Egypt?
No, I'm saying the books that we've studied, books on pre-dynastic Egypt, is older. Most that I study has been around longer than we've both been alive. So I'm pretty sure that the date of our birth has no correlation with the amounts of knowledge that we've studied. You've traveled Kemet, I've traveled Kemet. You've traveled Suda, I've traveled Suda. So it's the qualifications of this conversation, I would say, is either quite evenly matched, or I would even say in some cases an enhancement, being the fact that I'm coming from the schools of the Supreme Grand. You follow what I'm saying? And that's let me.
You can't ask me if I follow you on that.
Let's put it in the proper perspective. Okay. Right? Because the question that's commonly asked is what, not how. And I noticed that. And usually I see that coming from a more, and not necessarily directed towards you. I'm making that clear now. This statement is directed towards other people who've asked me that. I get a different vibe from you. But the conversation has always come from a more arrogant perspective, from people who believe things, who believe they understand things, who believe they understand things properly when they truly don't.
Like what?
Especially as far as language.
Okay.
Language is so key because tone, sound, and vibrational frequencies can affect your exact DNA molecules. Everybody can agree to that. When your alarm system is too loud in the morning and it pierces your ears, you literally feel your heart rate rise and your body jumps out. In some cases, it can put you in a middle state known as sleep paralysis. These are actual facts. So it is a fact that tones affect your body. Colors give off tones. I'm still talking about, what I'm doing is I'm talking solely about linguistics. But you'll see, I have to be but I'm a teacher. You see what I'm saying? I'm deciding to tell you, I'm very different than anybody on the channel. I don't go for hard points back and back. I teach and build on a topic.
Well, let's agree on something though, because we're talking about something.
We are, and that's what I'm trying.
What happens if you go too far afield? What will end up happening is we'll lose each point.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. But
so there were three things that you were supposed to.
And I'm trying to address them, but you're not allowing me. Right now, I'm dealing with Nuwaubain, and I'm gonna get to the last next. But right now, I'm dealing with the Nuwaubic, because you asked the question: you said Nuwaubic is a created language. I said no, it's ancient. So now
it's older than the Medu Neter, is what you said.
I said see, you say stuff I didn't say. I said there are languages. I said there are languages that are older than the Medu Neter. I said there are dialects that are older than the Medu Neter. Is not that's okay, but my original point was, and Sinetta will agree, that my original point was that we as Nuwaubians like to deal with the oldest of everything, therefore we can unify all Africans. Hebrew Israelites can differentiate themselves from the African community, even though but listen. Hebrew Israelites can differentiate and divide themselves from the black community, and they'd be darker than me and you. And the reason why they're able to do that is because they're stuck in what is called a zero time reference. They're stuck in a certain time period, and they won't separate themselves from that time period. If everybody goes pre all time periods, we'll run into the same initial factor, which is the birth of all creation. So when dealing with the Nuwaubic language, first and foremost, the Nuwaubic language is an ancient language. The Nuwaubic language was put back together, yes. The Nuwaubic language was updated, yes. The Nuwaubic language was modernized, yes. But modernization is happening quite frequently inside the conscious community recently. Even the brother Baba Havru has introduced a 42 new version or updated version of the laws of Ma'at. So that means we all can agree, at least in this conversation, that updates is definitely necessary for the new world that we live in, not the ancient world. Great. I'm coming up, but allow me to teach.
You're going far afield.
I'm not. You just have to listen.
For a long time.
But you're a high priest, so that means you should have already mastered the art of patience.
It's not about me being impatient.
It's about the people.
The fact that we're watching. Yes.
Great.
Yes, because there's an audience. So when you go too far afield, everyone loses the function of the debate. I'm not even sure if you understand the three things that you haven't still told me what those three things were, because I think that in your conversation you've lost track of those three things you were answering in the beginning. So what were they? Tell me what those three were, so we're sure we're on the same point.
First and foremost, one thing I don't like is I don't like people who seek to direct me in conversation when I've been asked a question. So first I'd like to answer the question. Let's be very clear. So I'm telling you,
Brother, you said that you're going to answer those three things.
I am.
So what were
I'm answering the three. I don't have to go back and revisit that with you and play the semantic game.
Not talking about the three
I'm
things.
dealing directly with the question of was I'm not dealing with the question of
You're
Nuwaubain?
not dealing with the questions.
Okay,
that's why I'm asking you.
We're going back and forth rather than me explaining Nuwaubain. You understand what I'm saying?
You've been talking now for about 15 minutes.
But now you're getting
right?
You're getting excited about.
No, I'm certainly not excited.
I hope not.
Let me say one thing. This is not even this is not an attack on you at all. But when you have a conversation, right? If you lose track of the initial points, the conversation becomes pointless.
I'm at point 2.
And but I don't think you answered point 1. And I asked you what was point 1. You didn't really explain it to.
You asked me 3 questions in a row, so I'm answering 3 questions.
Yes, but I think you might have lost track of what those 3 things were. And that's not an insult. I'm not trying to insult you. Okay. But what I want us to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, because we're not talking about the same thing. That we could be having this conversation with 2 other people.
So allow me to explain what
okay. That's not what the question was.
That was the second question.
No. See that? No, it was
the second question.
That was not the second.
The second question was about.
That was not the second.
Hold on. The second question was I stated that Nuwaubain was ancient. He said it was created. So he said, "Wait, you're gonna have to tell me how." And the moment the word "how" came in the picture, it became a question. You're gonna have to tell me how Nuwaubain is ancient, and that's what I'm trying to answer. But the first thing is I have to identify language, because you stated then you butted in and started talking about ages of the Medu Neter versus the Hieratic versus other languages. So from there, I said Medu Neter is not the oldest language, and I never got to explain why. I went into initially speaking on linguistics based on tone frequencies, and I went in and gave an example of the alarm system.
What the third thing was?
Listen, let me address the second thing.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? Let me address the second thing. This guy, you got.
Try to do it in a briefer way.
I will minimize it as fast as I can.
Thank you.
As fast as I possibly can. The first thing that has to be understood with the purpose. That's what I'm talking about right now. It's the purpose of the Nuwaubain language. That's what leads to its history. The purpose of the Nuwaubain language deals with time periods as well as deals with tone, sounds, and vibrations. So as I said earlier, I said we as Nuwaubians would not pronounce the word netter. We would pronounce it nathar. And we would pronounce it nathar based on our translation. What has to be agreed is that we sitting down already knowing we're not gonna agree on the same thing. Otherwise, I'd be wearing purple and you'd be wearing black and gold.
But you know, I don't have a problem with nathar.
Great, but listen what I'm saying. It was
the reason why I looked at Osaze because go.
So thank you.
That's not the point, is what I'm saying.
It is, okay. But you'll see. You'll see. So that's the purpose. The purpose behind Nuwaubain was to put the proper tones in place. So as you see on my screen here, I have a breakdown. I have a breakdown of the origins of the word of the Nuwaubain language. Okay. So as you now see, right? When you're dealing with the Nuwaubain language was organized and revamped and put back together based upon numerous of lost scripts that were broken up dialects. I'm gonna go through the different dialects so you can understand. You had many different African dialects where when the master teacher Panabab was over in Kemet, for the sake of this conversation, in Kemet, right, in Sudan, traveling Morocco, etc. He came, being his bloodline of the Mahdi, he came across many different many different tribes, and he sat down with many elders. I have the picture on the screen if it needs to be shown and proven. Sat down with many elders such as the Dungari tribe, etc., of ancient Nubia, and the people who still live in their indigenous status. Being the fact that he speaks such a fluency of so many languages, he was actually inducted. That's how he got his shaluks on his face, which is the tribal scars, to unify him with most of Northeast African tribes. And he was actually titled the translator by many of the tribe's chiefs and shamans. So when going there, the people there, this is the story that was told to me by my father, the people there was so upset, the indigenous people, and at that time they was upset about the building of the Aswan Dam. And being the fact they were so upset about the building of the Aswan Dam and how it was going to flood a lot of Egyptian temples and how they were taking things apart, they felt as though that use the word Egypt again, right? I did. And I gladly use it. They said, they felt, because you have to, once you understand that I gladly use the word Egypt, then you'll get past that. But that's something you have to accept internally. But what they have to understand is that when they was taking apart the Egyptian temples, etc., the indigenous people around there, the tribe people, were very insulted. The tribe people, the dark-skinned, woolly-haired people that live in the indigenous region, they feel as though as they are the direct descendants, and the Arab Republic of Egypt, right, the Arab Republic conquered Egypt and took over and pushed them out. And now that their ancestors, this is how they felt, their ancestor stuff was being tainted. So what the master teacher did is he gained a lot of information from those indigenous tribes. And what he came to discover is a lot of the languages that they spoke in their written scripts were all the same and all similar, such as Sabaean scripts correlation with Giz, correlation with Sub-Saharan. Hold on, let me finish. But I'll use your pronunciation, right? Sabaean scripts. Sabaean script dialects in its connection with Ge'ez dialects, in connection with Sub-Saharan dialects, in its correlation with Nilo-Saharan dialects, in its correlation with Ethiopian script dialects, etc. So with the master teacher, let me finish, please.
You said the same thing 4 times.
Please. What?
You said the same thing 4 times.
You know, what I'm noticing from you, brother Jabari,
you said the same thing 4 times.
One thing that, and Sonetta, I tell you, I told him just last night, is I said, you know what, I said, Sonetta, I think I like sitting down with brother Jabari. He seems like he's very well disciplined, but you're not allowing me actually to finish straight thoughts.
Let me be really clear.
But can I finish my explanation?
This is a remember you said you're going to be brief?
I'm being brief.
No, this is the definition of not brief.
Yeah, because you got.
This is not brief. This is not brief.
So being the fact that I'm not fitting the terms in which you want to speak on.
Like 5 minutes listening to you answer one part of one question.
Uh-huh.
If you do it that way, we're not going to be able to have a really good conversation.
Let me finish. That's all I got to do is finish. I'm almost there. That's all I got to do is finish.
Please.
Just one thing I say is hold on to the rope. That's it.
Hold on to the rope?
Hold on to the rope. Be patient. That's what it means. Be patient. We're almost there. I promise.
Disrespectfully, you would tell your elder what patience is, but I want you to go ahead. Go.
Okay, if you say so. But we, in our nation, elders is determined not only by age, but also by wisdom, guidance, and experience.
And I'm still your elder in that instance.
Once again, your opinion, but that's fine. You have to definitely remaster the arts of discipline. That's something I was hoping that the Shrine of Ma'at and the Shrine of Patal was teaching. But we're taught in Nuwaubain. In the Nuwaubian culture, we're taught the arts of patience, discipline, etc. At our very youngest ages of life.
I'm really trying to be respectful here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to talk to me about what my learning has been, that's going to be disrespectful. So please don't go in that direction.
Well, then let's continue.
Try to answer the question.
Indeed.
I'm really trying to give you time to answer the question. But you're going far afield.
Mm-hmm.
You're going far afield.
So I'm almost finished.
Okay.
So, as I was saying, I said, so what the master teacher discovered is he discovered that majority of these languages all had similar, very, 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 very similar scripts, and we can go into pictures if necessary, and they all had the same base of tones and vibrational frequencies. So what he did is he began to merge and marry them and say, okay, this word is in connection to this, they have the same meaning. Whereas you would say le'ek is the same in this language as lika is the same in this language as illa, and they all are connected. So what he began to do is marry those. And from those marriages, he termed, and remember, this day still does not know all of the sciences of ancient Egypt. Thus, us being scholars majority of us coming from the scholarship of what Caucasians have went and excavated and studied, and many black scholars as well, I give them credit, but I'm not going to be, you know what I mean, we're going to be quite blunt. Majority of the scholars that are in ancient Egypt are Caucasian of Arab descent, and they're dictating the information to the world.
I want to be clear that I view you as my brother, and we're having a brotherly conversation, but it becomes very difficult when you have really long answers. And so it's really helpful for you to hold some of it back. One of the reasons why I'm asking you to hold some of it back is because we can talk about some of those topics later in our discussion. But if we put it all into one question, it's impossible for us to have a dialogue and a discourse. So I don't want you to think that I am frustrated with you. I don't want you to think that I'm annoyed with you. I'm not annoyed or frustrated. I'm thinking about, as a teacher, I'm thinking about how to put bits of information in more digestible bits, more digestible segments, so that our family at home can interact in the data, interact with the data, interact with the discussion, and we can have a better conversation. But sometimes what happens, I think, in the way that you've answered thus far, is that you're going really far afield to say something kind of simple, and it's maybe simple.
Many questions. Can I ask you one?
You can, absolutely, but I want to respond to what you just said, okay? And I want you to be clear that when you said that your father dealt with ancient scripts, you said and you tried to give the different scripts, you said the same thing nearly. And I want you to also understand that Ge'ez is not older than the Kemetic language.
Definitely not. I completely agree.
But your point was that he took older languages and fused them together.
No, my point was he took the indigenous dialects of the surrounding regions, being the fact that Egypt was conquered. He took their indigenous dialects and he brought them together.
You have to understand that Ge'ez and the Sabaean language are not Kemetic languages. They're not even from that area. So the Sabaean language,
coming out of Ethiopia,
and we're talking about a long distance. Those are not similar languages.
Remember when I said that?
And so wait, let me finish. Yeah. So when you say that I really let him speak for a long time before I interrupted him. But so one of the things that you have to do is you have to recognize that as you put together these languages, and you say that the language of the Nuwaubic is not a new language, even if you try to put together languages, several different languages, and you try to fuse them into one language, to say that the language you've created is not new, I don't think anyone would agree with that. I think almost everyone would agree that if you do that, you're still creating a new language, because those different languages, by the way, you didn't describe different languages. You need to understand. You didn't. When you said Neolithic languages, first of all, that comes from Nile.
Exactly.
Right? So the people that are in the region wouldn't call themselves Neolithic. That's once again Greek. So what you've done is you've taken the same language, you've described the same language 4 times, and then you've actually gone to the ways that Europeans describe those languages. And I want you to understand that that's not putting together a region's language into one format. That just isn't the way you just described it. Maybe this is not something that your father told you entirely, and that's fair. I'm talking to you, I'm not talking to your dad. I don't want to be unfair to you and say that you have to recount to me everything your father did, and if you do it incorrectly, then that's an indictment on your dad, or your dad did something wrong. That would be unfair to you, right? That would be unfair. I don't want to be unfair. I was hoping that you really would have an understanding of what he did so that I'd be able to understand some of what he did.
I'm trying to explain it.
But I think that if you described it the way that you did, that's not creating an ancient language. That's not putting together an ancient language. That's essentially, all languages are based on languages that were before them. All the English language is based on languages before them. That's not doing something new, but you can't say the English language is an ancient language just because it has corollaries to ancient languages and is influenced by ancient language, and it certainly is. But that doesn't mean it's an ancient language. You could still say that we believe the English language has an origin, and we would give that a time frame. So that my question to you, and this is the third part, right, that I want us to try to get to, because maybe if I got clear on the third part of the question, then some of what I'm asking you might actually be unfair, right? And I don't want to be unfair to you. I want to have a better understanding. So, but to me, it would seem very clear to me that the Nuwaubian language would be a newer language, and that's nothing wrong with creating a newer language. But my point is, and I think that there's some use to having a newer language. It means that you actually can develop a group of people around language, and you can make sure that you actually imbue it with concepts that they understand, concepts that they can really take greater knowledge from. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with creating a newer language. I really hope you understand that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that if you are drawing inspiration from Kemet, why would you create a language when we have one of the world's earliest language? Why would you simply look at text written by someone relatively recently when there are texts that are thousands of years old? And so that part of it confuses me a little bit. But then the third part of what I asked you was, I wanted you to talk to me a bit about whether the Nuwaubian tradition is a Kemetic tradition, and you said that it wasn't. So if you can try, maybe what I'm saying to you is unfair, because if you don't view yourself as a Kemetic tradition, then why should you be held by the standards of ancient Kemet? So maybe that's a good place for us to go, so I can have a better understanding on how I should approach the dialogue with you.
Everything you said was absolutely great, wonderful, and gravy. But the key thing that keeps getting forgotten, and I like the strategy. It's a decent strategy. I don't know if it's conscious or I don't know if it's conscious or subconscious. But how it's like, okay, I'm going to ask questions, you're going to answer. I'm going to attempt to debunk your questions with my level of understanding or overstanding from my 30 plus years of scholarship, which is very great qualifications to be sure, but and then we're gonna move on. No, if you ask me a question, I answer it, and you disagree with that answer, then what would be the intellectual thing to do is I would say is either I should be allowed to internally and furtherly give that breakdown. If I'm not allowed to do so,
breakdown
to whatever I'm saying. If I say the sky is red and you say the sky is blue, then the person who's speaking should be allowed to say, okay, well, let me tell you why the sky is red. Let me tell you how the sky became.
Discuss it, you can
great.
That.
That's what I was
saying. You can't.
Well, anytime I do, I try to do it initially, and so it can get through each question. And anytime I do, then you say my dialogue's too long.
It's the length.
It's a lot of information. I mean, we're dealing with 3,000 years. We can't push that in 3 minutes.
That's why you have to try to give bites of information that are.
I have 5 to 6 hour videos on Sinetta's channel.
That's fine.
Sinetta, am I lying?
But right now,
5 hour video because we're dealing with 3,000 plus years ago. So being the fact we can't leave no gaps. Like how every time I say the word Egypt,
you say 3,000 years. What do you?
I say I'm 3,000 plus years of information. 3,000 plus, meaning we can go 4, 5, 6.
You're talking about ancient Kemet.
I'm talking about all of world. That's why I said this, and this answers your third question. Nuwaubians don't just deal with one region. Nuwaubians deal with the origin of all Africans all over the world. Okay. So therefore, we're saying, okay, how did the Native Americans, who are Africans in our science, I'm not sure if you agree with that, but how does the Native Americans?
The world was an African, I mean, if you think of it that way. I think.
Okay, no, we definitely don't agree on that. I definitely say, and I'm pretty sure a majority of the chat room would say, a Caucasian is definitely not African, and the Asian is not African either. Some Asian tribes have African descent, but when you're dealing with the original Mongoloid, they're in our science, and we can agree to disagree to get to the point.
Talk about that part.
Yeah, but as far as the once again on the Nuwaubic language, it's not a conglomerate. Like, okay, we're just gonna take this and this and this and shove it together. No, it's correlation. That's why I asked you, do you speak language? And maybe I should have had this conversation with linguists. With as you said, your wife would be the scholar more so in language. But when you speak language, you're able to hear the similar sounds, such as when you say the word, like a lot of people say, religion comes from the Greek or the Latin term religio, and that refers back to binding or bondage. As a lot of people say that, right? The reason why they're able to marry those two is because the similarity in sound and the correlation to its original and Latin being older. So we simply, and make sure this is understood, and I remember I said Medu Neter is definitely used by Nuwaubians. As you can see on my show, on my slide here, I have the Medu Neter part of it, because we use the Medu Neter as one of our largest references. But what we look at is we're looking at the fact that the Nuwaubic is the proper pronunciations based on the dialects, because we deem the Medu Neter not 100% incorrect, but we say that there are flaws based on the people who are tampered with it over time. So we utilize the indigenous tribes who would be closer to speaking the language natively than anybody else. The indigenous people in the surrounding areas who migrated, whose real descendancy, not the pale Arabs that are there now. We utilize their indigenous languages. This is what the master did, and these are the pictures with him.
Which languages are we talking about? Which peoples are we talking about?
Okay, which like I mentioned, this guy right here. Mm-hmm. This guy right here is the chief of the Dungabi tribe, but this picture was taken in 1969. So we're talking about the different regional tribes. There's numerous. You've traveled, so you've been in a Jeep, right? You know what I'm talking about, as far as going from city to city, but not by like anything, but by the Jeep through the desert.
But I want to understand. But what I want to understand is what.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just go ahead and you put it in.
I want to make sure I'm asking.
So for example, if you say, what was the language of the ancient Olmecs? And people say, well, we can't really figure out the proper pronunciations. But we do know that the Hopi Native Americans that have migrated out of Mexico into Arizona today, we do know that their indigenous language, and we know that being that those people migrated out of those same people, we can say that the Hopi Native American language would be deemed similar. We can say that
Why would you say that?
Because they migrated out of the same. Me and you live together. We have our same slang. You say Kemet, so everybody, I'm sure your wife says Kemet, and that's y'all term for Egypt. Whereas me, I would say either Egypt, not because of word. I would say Egypt for the understanding of people, and I've become comfortable with it, which is, I agree, is not a good thing for our people. But the term that we use internally as a Nuwaubian is we'll say Tamare or Patamaye Reye. So being at that fact, you use that term doesn't mean that we're not describing the same thing. What someone would have to do is they would have to bridge the gap between the Medu Neter and the Nuwaubic. And how you do that is you say, well, the word Kemet comes from what? Chem, again, I won't say Hebrew, I'll just say Chem. The Chem part on Kemet, you agree, means black, right? Okay. Whereas in the Nuwaubic,
charred is kind of what it means.
Well, referring to it still refers back to a darker tone.
I think so. Yeah.
So
think
whereas in the Nuwaubain, which is a conglomeration, not even a conglomeration because it wasn't forced to be together, it was put back together because it was once together. The word would be kamem. So kamem, which also means black, you can see its correlation to the Menuneta as Kem, but we're dealing with more so the Caucasian's translation, and we're using it today. Like when I saw your Egyptian name, right?
I'm not sure if I understood. Wait, say this.
Okay.
One more time.
Okay. How'd
you get to kamem?
Okay.
So
kamem is how we say in Nuwaubain black, but Nuwaubain is a unified or brought back reunited language of the indigenous people who all were once one people. And they say that they were the original Egyptians, these Africans in northern Sudan and southern parts of Egypt. And they said they were pushed out by the Arabs when the Arabs took over, etc. And these are their indigenous language. This was what they speak.
So
and when
what peoples are we talking about?
I'm trying to, but let me finish one point at each question.
The Hopi.
No, I use that as a simple example.
Okay.
Because
that's what I mean when I say you're going far afield.
But listen, if you listen to the example, you'll get it. Okay. If you say the Olmecs are the first Native Americans, some people say that. Okay, how would we discover the proper pronunciations and the because tone, that's why I went to tones. Tones are important in connection to your ancestors, because I agree with you 1,000,000,000% when you say that our ancestors lived through their names and we have to speak their names. We have to have their names and inherit it. That is key, because that aligns us. If you're one who deals with animism, dealing with ancestral worship or things of that nature, that would be more so aligning us with them as far as tone, sound, and vibrational frequencies. Being at that fact, that means we would need to have the proper pronunciation. We can't have the proper pronunciation through the Greeks, who is and the Caucasians, and the Arabs, who are distributing Egyptology from their point of view majorly through all of our universities world over. Majorly, because in some cases you have those rogue black teachers who say, we ain't having this, we ain't having that, and these birthed a lot of our Dr. Clarks and Dr. Benz, those who stood up to certain facts and said, wait a minute, the Caucasians are not going to pass this fact. Yes, the Egyptians was black and they fought that. Yes, this and it. So in that same train of thought, you have to do the same thing with Menuneta. Menuneta, we're saying the proper pronunciations is wrong. That's what we're saying. We're saying netter is not the way that we speak, and we actually will show you and prove to you how netter is short and cut, referring more towards their language, whereas we spoke in tones similar to our drums. And when we spoke in tones, it would vibrate more coming from the back of the throat, which you learn when you learn to speak the actual languages. So at that fact, he studied the indigenous, and we found that the language, Nuwaubain, matched Menuneta terrifically. The only thing that was different, do you speak Nuwaubain? You can't do that until you speak Nuwaubain. Well, I'm gonna bridge the gap. Let me bridge the gap.
You can explain it to me.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
I'm gonna bridge the gap. Nuwaubain is mirror to Menuneta as far as the speaking. Now that script that you saw up on the screen is the script. This is the script, so it's not the same script. It's not Hedafat. It's not hieretics, and it's not or hieroglyphs or Menuneta, etc. It's none of those. But the tone and the frequency of the words are the same. Where you say Kemet, Kem meaning black, or a tone, or a darker skin tone, or a darker tone of something, is the same in our language, which is the indigenous language of the surrounding people, which is Kamem or Kamem, which is what? Black again. So hold on, we're almost there. Throughout the entire Nuwaubain study, all of our words match. It's just proper pronunciation and a different written script.
The challenge I have is that as someone who's been in the community and worked in the community for a long time, is that sometimes when I speak to people, sometimes, yeah, but we don't have the camera. Come on, man, you gotta.
I agree with that.
You gotta be in here. So sometimes when being one of the folks that has been in the community for a long time, sometimes I speak to folks that are in the Kemetic, in the Nuwaubic tradition. There have been many people who have approached us and thought that the Nuwaubic language was actually the ancient Kemetic language, and I know that's a challenge, and they'll talk with us. Mm-hmm. And though that language, from my understanding, is radically different than the Kemetic language. We don't understand what they're saying at all. And as someone who speaks the Kemetic language, someone who studied the Kemetic language and recognizes different dialects. We don't all say it the same way. If you go, let me finish. Wait. Let me finish. If you look at, for example, I come from the lineage of the Shrine of Ptah, right? We sound a little bit different than, for example, the Temple of Anu out of New Jersey. They're our sister temple. We're very close in understanding, but the way that they render the language is a little different than ours. We understand each other, right? And that's partially because they are speaking the language in a manner that comes a little bit further from the great elder Babu Mfundishi, right? But they're close enough that we understand each other. When I talk to people, some of the people in Asara Set Society, I have not found them to use much of the Kemetic language. But when I talk to them, I understand what they're saying. We rendered the words a little bit differently. But when I speak to people that are speaking Nuwaubic, none of us, and I'm going to tell you this as not just Jabari Osaze, but none of the groups that I just mentioned would understand or even recognize words in Nuwaubic. This is not the same language. And I understand that what you're saying is that you've unified the languages of indigenous people. But in doing that, how could you then say that this is a language that is ancient? That would still be something that is new. If you're pulling together things from other places, as I said, all languages are based on their predecessors. I use this example on Sonnetters Network sometimes. When you look at a shaft of light that comes from the sun, we call sun in English. But the reason why we call the ray of sun is because it harkens back to Re or Ra, the Kemetic sun deity. So clearly, wait, let me say this. So clearly what has happened is the Kemetic language and Kemetic understanding of the world has found its way into modern languages. And so modern languages are always built on those languages that are surrounding them, that come from earlier languages, that from the people that they have interaction with. There are words that are in the English language that come from Spanish, for example. Mosquito. That is not an English word. Coffee is not an English word. Coffee actually comes from the West African folks who knew coffee, the African that was brought here. Some people don't necessarily understand that there are words and things that come from other languages that come into languages. That doesn't mean that English is as old as those other languages. It just means it has some ancillary, some correlations to earlier languages. And so I just want to challenge you on the concept that in this sense, Nuwaubic would be, in that sense, not created, that it is an ancient language. And I want to say to you that maybe that standard, that's a standard that I follow because I am a Kemetic priest, I'm a historian, and I think that we are, in many ways, we are attempting to rebuild and reclaim something that comes from one of the world's greatest civilizations. Kemet is, I'm Kemet all day, every day. I'm authentically Kemetic, as my chief priest in the Temple of Anu would say, Rasanku Kepper. I mean, listen, that brother and I vibe a lot. And the way that he looks at the world and the way I look at the world is very similar. But the reason why I want to have to sit down with you is because I'm trying to understand the Nuwaubian tradition.
That means I should be doing a lot of explaining.
And yeah, that's why I'm asking you questions. And I'm trying to understand how it fits. So I want you to talk more about language, but maybe I'm being unfair to you because I want you to talk to me about whether you see the Nuwaubian tradition as a Kemetic tradition. Because if it's not a Kemetic tradition, then maybe the standard that I'm trying to apply to you is unfair. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you see the Nuwaubic tradition as something else, it's almost like if I went, yeah, but I want you to explain how. Because if I went to, that's fine. But if I'm talking to a Hindu person and I'm saying, why isn't your tradition based in Kemet? That's unfair, right? Because they're very clear that their reference is not ancient Kemet. So in that sense, trying to understand their traditions in that manner does not make sense. So if you're doing something different, then maybe the standard I'm giving you is unfair. And I'll tell you the reason why I think of your tradition as one that is coming from Kemet in some ways, even though I don't understand some of what you do. All of your iconography, the overall majority of your iconography is Kemetic. You know, it's very clear that when I was interested in Dr. York's movement, when I was most interested in the 80s, clearly that reference was Islamic. Now I know that you're saying that they were teaching things that were coming from Kemet. I'm not going there. Maybe you were. I mean, that's fair. I'm not contrasting that. But I'm saying that when you made the shift, my understanding, it was my interpretation. It's my interpretation. I'm accepting that. I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that. But we're not arguing that. I'm saying based on what I saw, that's what I thought. We're not arguing that at all. Based on what I saw.
Because that was our goal.
So maybe that was your goal. But we're not debating that. I'm saying that if you say that, you say that. I accept that. But what I am saying is that when you made the shift, and there was a shift, where you were focusing more, I began to think of you as a Kemetic tradition. And so if you are not seeing yourself that way, then maybe there's a different kind of conversation we should have so I can better interface with my brothers and sisters from the Nuwaubain community.
Once again, oh man, we gotta do the work.
And in the camera ourselves, I don't even know if you in the center there.
Gotta do the work ourselves, man.
Goodness.
Where's the cameraman? But as far as the right, as far as the things that you're saying, as far as the language, once again, the language is not, I wouldn't render it new. The reason why I wouldn't render it new is because we all, like as you just said, is that the language are coming from the same origins, and they come down and they birth, like how you used the correlation, which I thought was beautiful. You correlated Ra and Re and those different, but Ra is more so of a Greek translation, where with Re would be more in favor to the Meruneta, and then in the Nuwaubain, which is the indigenous around the surrounding areas, which we say is we deem as the better pronunciation for intonement, meaning putting yourself aligned with your ancestors if that's your goal, and we deem it as the proper scripts. That's our opinion, right? And that's our opinion based on the facts that we have to present, which I put together just for you. I tailor-made it for you, and I haven't been able to present it, but it's okay, it's fine, because we don't even have a cameraman. You know what I mean? But to bring it full surface, how Re, R-E is more in favor to Meruneta, Ra is more in favor to the Greeks.
Is that fair?
Let me just finish. In the Nuwaubic translation, you would say Reye, which would be if you was to spell it in English, I'm guessing it would be R-E-Y-E-Y, Reye, etc. So that's how we term it, right? Based on the indigenous. So we can't say that Nuwaubain is a new language, because based on see, that's the thing, the difference between going on tours in Egypt. When you go on tours in Egypt, you're seeing what you're wanted to see. Go to the people, not the Arab people. Go out, and that's what I said, but you said you have, in the Jeep. And when you go out in the Jeep and you get to meet the people who live in the desert and live through them sandstorms, especially in the 1960s, because if they're in the 1960s, that means their elders was born in the 1800s. That makes those elders more knowledgeable on the topic, because those elders would be much older, and we're trying to get in tune with the oldest. So at that fact, Nuwaubain is just a proper pronunciation for the purpose of entombment. Would we say it's older than Meruneta? We would say it's older than the Meruneta that is known today, not the glyphs. No, we're saying it's older than the Meruneta pronunciation, because we're building off of a Caucasian and Greek substance. I feel, and I hope this is correct, but I feel as though that young Pharaoh, I don't know if you're familiar with his work, his argument was close to this, but he didn't have all the facts on it. So he said, it really was, but
I think we both agree on that one.
Yeah, it wasn't strong at all, because it wasn't because then he would deem everything. He's young, but he would have to deem everything that he was saying. He would have to deem everything false. Even his own teachings would be rendered false. We don't say that. We say the Greeks have their translation and they've imposed it on the world. How do we get the proper? And we get the proper in the classical translations from those indigenous people, not combining their dialects ourselves, their tribes, and hold on, but I named one of the most famous as I brought pictures.
The Gaez folks you talking about? Or
no, I'm talking about the Dungabi people. That's actually my father's tribe. When you actually go into the study of the Al-Mahdi family, you'll find out about the Dungabi people of North Sudan, which actually in ancient times, and more ancient, because more ancient times, they was known as the Noba people. And they lived in a region now known as Nakada in Arabic, which means critics or judges. But formerly, the hieroglyph is actually for it, and the hieroglyph is NBW, and I have it right here for you. And the hieroglyph means gold. Mm-hmm. This is where, and that word actually,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, it actually birthed, see there it is? It actually birthed it actually birthed the word Nubia, Nuba, etc. And this is an image.
No disagreement on that.
This is an image of some of the people.
Right.
Right. And we even have their chief. This is their chief. He's no longer living now. He was an elder. But this is their chief in 1969 with our master teacher, Partner Bab Yanun. And you saying, the other last thing that I had to touch on is you're saying you've spoken to Nuwaubians who speak Nuwaubic, and it's not the same. The reason for that is because a lot of Nuwaubians, you have to understand that you're dealing with those who are well learned, and you're dealing with those who are not. And some people are well learned just in the science. Some people are well learned just in the language. Like I said myself, I speak many languages, but I would not call myself a perfect. I'm trying. Right now, my current study is I want to be termed as linguist. I want that term. So that's why I'm learning. So as I'm learning, that's why I said certain things. I said, I will deem it as an opinion. I will take your opinion being based on your qualification, and I'll study the topic and refer back to you on it if I'm incorrect. But because I'm studying. Life to me is to me, there's no limit. It's infinite.
From each other.
Exactly.
We're gonna learn from each other. I brought you here not as a debate. I want to.
Well, a lot of my family, via my father's family, is the Al Mahdi. Are you familiar with the Mahdi family of Sudan?
Well,
okay, that's a lot of my blood family. People try to debunk it, but they can debunk whatever. I've been there. I got pictures with them, like, you know what I mean? Whatever. I'm not gonna go back and forth of obvious. You know, it's like somebody saying your cousin's not your cousin.
I wouldn't debate that.
I know, but I'm saying for the people, someone saying your cousin's not your cousin. You're like, he's okay.
I don't even know why people would go there. I mean,
whatever they want to say, right? Well, being the fact that I've been there and met with a lot of them, they were not anymore. They were in high power prior to 2012. Y'all know Sudan divided, sadly, but they were in high power in Sudan. That same family, which is still my family, my father's side of the family, is what allowed him to get certain access to things that we're not allowed to on Kemetic tours. I've been on Kemetic tours. I haven't been on nowhere near as you. I went to Kemet twice.
I lead the tours. I don't just go on tours.
I've been on the tours. But that's great that you lead them. I haven't led any Kemetic tours because when I look at Kemet, and this is where it gets to your meat of your question when you was asking the difference. I look at Kemet when the actual physical place, dealing with Cairo, the center point right there. And dealing with, for the sake of
Herman Smalls, me and Herman going back.
Well, I deal with the actual place, the Giza Plateau. As we as Nuwaubians, we don't like it. And the reason why we don't like it is not that we find it imperfected. It's not that we don't like our ancestors. It's the fact that we feel that our ancestors have been abused by the world. It's no honor in going in the tombs. It's fun. It's exciting. It's good to see. But it's no honor in it if you truly proclaim these people as your ancestors. You say, well, shit, you got my mother sitting on here on display instead of in peace. And if you go by the coming forth by day and their death ceremonies and death rituals, they're not supposed to be on no display for the world to see. It's supposed to be a sacred ritual, a closing. That's why they seal the tombs. And now we're going in there tainting our. So we as Nuwaubians, it's like going to Kemet is like going to a cemetery. For us, I
agree and disagree. Now let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I disagree. I disagree because I just came in to hear that part. I disagree because you got to understand the ancestors put it there so we can understand the science and lessons of history. So it would be a disservice for them to put all that work in the tombs and nobody ever knew what that was about or what they represented. You see what I'm saying? So we go in there, it's an honor to go in there to say, well, Dad, this is what they did. That's like, for example, let's say Sarnetta passes on. And now if everybody is out there just making their own assumptions on what happened, but some certain people go in and say, well, let me go and find out on my own and do the research on my own. I would want that. Yeah. I would want somebody to come out and be able to tell the truth, just like your pops. You would want people to tell the truth. You don't want him to move on and transition with a lie over his head. Exactly. And I'm quite sure he don't care who would come and bring the truth. It could be a goddamn faggot that come and say, hold up. No, listen, see, there you go. You're getting caught up on. No, brother. I wouldn't give it that if it was a faggot that come and said, no, son, that was this and he did that and this is what happened. That wouldn't hurt me because I'm not a faggot. You see what I'm saying? He just brought out the information that everybody was missing. Do you understand? So it don't matter who bring out. I wouldn't care if it was a white man that brought the information out. The problem is the truth has to come out.
But the thing about it is when you're dealing with your ancestors would want you to know about it, but think about it. You would naturally know about it because it's your culture. Right. So it wouldn't be something I have to see. Being at the fact of I don't have to go and... I don't have. You wouldn't have to. One, it wasn't. The tombs were not built to be visited. The tombs were built for, according to when you're dealing with the coming forth by day, for when our ancestors was in their science to return to the body, if so, to return to the body, and then they would be to inherit whatever riches they took with them and come back for whatever purposes they were in which to come back for. So going in the tomb as a tourist, I think is fun. I think it's great. I think it's a great opportunity to see my culture. The thing that I'm saying is if I identify as that my ancestry, would it be exploitation of ancient Kemet? Yes. Would it be disrespectful to our ancestors and their practices? Yes, especially.
Yeah, the white man.
Yeah, it's the white man doing it. Now, if we have it and it's in our, like if me, let's say me and brother Jabari, I say, yo, brother Jabari, I got 10 million. I don't. and
Like, please, family.
Because they'll hold me to it. They'll say,
that's an example,
and brother Jabari got 10 million. We came together and we said, yo, we about to go buy back some of these mummies from the Smithsonian. We're going to build an Egyptian museum. We're going to format it, mirror to the...
You're going to stop using the word Egyptian.
I'm telling you.
You're going to stop using that word?
Okay, we use a...
Because you know better.
I use Tamaray. I use Tamaray, but I'm saying...
You know better.
Okay, I'll say Tamaray.
But Jabari, do you have a problem with Tamaray?
I say Tamari. I don't have any problem with that. That's a dialect. That's a dialect. I have no, but come on, brother. You have a few words that come from the Kemetic language. There are a lot of words that you just put together. We just named one.
Which one?
You just talked about Tamaray. You talked about the word black, where you take part of that from the Kemetic language.
I didn't say that
But
at all.
yes, you did. You said that the part of the Kemetic language comes from Kem. Sort of your word black comes from the Kemetic word for black.
I said that.
So that's what I'm
I
saying.
didn't say Nuwaubain comes from it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No. I'm not. No, you're disagreeing. Wait. We haven't even gotten past, like, we're not live. We're not live because it would have to be on his phone. But we are at the point where we've not gotten through a lot of stuff. So this is obviously going to have to be more than one conversation. I'm not. We can continue. I'm not saying it's almost over. Family. But I think that when I listen to people speak the Nuwaubic language, I recognize the Kemetic language. It is the tongue that I am most naturally connected to.
I agree.
And so when I hear Nuwaubic, I am not hearing the Kemetic language. And I'm talking to you now. I'm not talking about dialect, because this is what you didn't hear, Sa. I hear lots of different dialects. The Temple of Anu says things differently than the Temple of Ma'at. So, for example, we say Nbethet. They say Nebtehet. That's a dialect, right?
The Nuwaubians made up their own language.
That's what he's disagreeing with. He's saying that the language is an ancient language that was recompiled. And as he's describing this, Sa, I wish you were here to hear all this. You'll see it on video. I think that even if you're trying to compile things from ancient language, what you create is new. It cannot be the same thing. It has to be new, because all languages...
One language, and as people moved around, they spread different dialects of the language. That's how
I think that... I think that...
What we attempted to do...
The question, we could even swap if you're more comfortable. I want you to be comfortable. So my issue is that when we look at the Nuwaubic, and I said this again, I don't have a problem with a new language. I don't have a problem with the new language. Hold on 1 second. I don't have a problem with new languages. I think that creating a new language for a group of people can be powerful, and there's nothing wrong with coming into our power. The Tamhu, the European, has taken away our tongues. If we are going to decide that we are going to create new tongues that will empower us, absolutely, go ahead, African. I take no issue with that. But I am saying that what we truly need to do, what our fundamental aim in this period must be, is to take the African back into knowledge of themselves. Because as we do that, we're going to connect ourselves to those most powerful people on the planet, those people that gave civilization to the world. And so that is why I took issue a little bit with you being a tradition that takes so much from Kemet and then not taking the Kemetic language. And I know you're saying that the Kemetic language is part of what you took, that you're taking it also from other languages. And you've also said, and this is a recap, you've also, because Sa wasn't here, not as much for people at home, please bear with me, that you also took from people in the region. I would even question whether those people in the region have always been in the region, because groups of people move. Yeah. There's an argument that the Nobu people are not people that were there in antiquity. There's a good argument for it. I'm not saying it's definitive, because I think that there's an also good argument they were always there. But but I'll say to you that when I talk to people in the region today, the majority of the people in the region speak Arabic, first of all, because it has been so forceful. Yeah, it has really been forced upon them. So that most people don't know their ancient languages. And then in addition to that, understand that almost none of those ancient peoples, with exception, you gotta listen, none of those ancient people, with the exception of, and I'm gonna even go further south just for the purpose of this conversation, with the exception of those people that are in modern day Ethiopia. And that's a Greek term. I don't even want to use Ethiopia. What's the word you want to use? The modern. I'm not gonna. That would take me far afield. Let's not do that yet. Let's not do that yet. Let's not. Please. It's probably several words. It's probably not one word.
The thing about it is, I was actually just studying that, and I really want you.
Let's talk about that. But don't send me there yet. Oh, Prince York.
I did not. I was doing research.
Yes.
I could not find from any credible resource of what word would be the oldest for ancient Ethiopia. So I really would like to know what you think it is based on your understanding, honestly.
The reason why I didn't answer it very quickly is because there is no quick answer. There are several different terms. And the other thing is that we're talking about different periods of time. You know that in different periods, nations have different names. So that some of that is a little... and we're also talking about, when we talk about nations, in some instances, we're talking about smaller places, so that in some ways what we would consider a city today might have been a nation, right? So these are all things. That's why this conversation, like what you said, Napata? Like Napata. Yes. So in that instance, what ends up happening is it becomes more difficult for us to be able to give a national word. So I don't want to go too far afield on that. But even if we were going to talk about the Ge'ez, right? Ge'ez being an older language in that region, a language that comes from those people in that region. Right? Ge'ez, I don't think anyone would argue that Ge'ez is older than the Kemetic language. And it's the only one in that region, one of the only ones in the region, the only one in that region that has a script. Almost all of the other languages don't have scripts. And if they do have scripts, they're much younger than the Kemetic language. Like, for example, there is a Meroitic script, which is the people from I'm going to finish. I'm going to finish and give it to you in 15 seconds. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you in 15 seconds. Wait, listen.
And you got all that
in 15 seconds. In 15 seconds. Let me say this. The Meroitic. The Meroitic.
He said he wasn't.
Listen. This brother is being slippery here. I'm teasing you. Please don't get upset. The basically understand that the Meroitic script has not even been entirely deciphered yet, and that's the script from the Nubian people. But that's much younger than the Medo-Neter, right? Yeah. So it being much younger than the Medo-Neter also means that this becomes a challenge when you're trying to pull together languages. It's not. Can you say it's an indigenous language? It's certainly a younger language. So if you're trying to go back to a common source, going to the Meroitic and the Ge'ez are the best ways, but those aren't earlier than Medo-Neter.
Okay, Sinetta, can you get the camera together? 30. I only need 30 seconds. One more time. Nah, you was not here.
That's impossible for you.
That's impossible.
You know, they actually in my community they call me Long Wind. Yeah, they actually do.
Okay,
let's go. But I'm gonna try to make. I'm really gonna try to make this the shortest win possible.
Okay.
What the brother Jabari is not overstanding what I'm saying is I'm not saying Nuwaubain is an ancient language, but what you have to grasp Nuwaubain is an ancient language. What you have to grasp is the concept of it, the science behind it, the language. Every language that I named. Sabian script from Ge'ez to Sub-Saharan script, etc. Ge'ez. That's. Yeah, I don't have that pronunciation.
Yeah, you gotta say it right.
My first language was Arabic, so we speak from this side. Whereas I noticed in Ethiopians that speak Arabic, they speak from this side. So it's two different parts of the mouth.
All right.
So I have to adjust to pronunciation. But what all of the languages that I named, all those dialects that I said that came out of the original Nuwaubic that we're speaking to.
Came out of the original Nuwaubic?
That's what we're saying. We're saying that all of those indigenous tribes, and they all agree, and I will go, I gotta put together a list, and then you give me an email and I will send it to you, you can study them. Okay. All of those indigenous tribes surrounding Nubia, as well as Kemet, as well as the entire Aswan area, the whole Nile Valley area, it's many of the indigenous tribes. All of their languages are relatively the same. They have different terms for the language. They have similar pronunciations, like, for example, the word Ra to Re. But what we did is we didn't say that Nuwaubic is older. I'm not saying that. Please understand.
Ancient is an ancient.
Listen, just listen. I'm not saying Nuwaubic.
I'm trying to understand.
Okay, just listen. I'm not saying Nuwaubic is older. What I'm saying is
older than what?
The Medunetta.
Okay.
I'm saying Nuwaubic, yes, is an ancient language, and it birthed those languages. And I'm saying
which languages?
Sub-Saharan script, Sabian script, etc.
Nuwaubic birthed those languages?
Please let me just get to. If I can get to it, it'd be over. It'd be short.
Okay.
Nuwaubic is the proper pronunciation of the Medunetta, and it's a different written script. That's what we're saying. Just hear what we're saying, then you can be able to address it properly. It's a different written script, such as hieratic is a written script. It's a different written script, and it's the proper pronunciation. So as I said, when you're dealing with the word re, R-E, is more so used in what? In Medunetta, whereas Ra is more so used in Greek terminology, but both was translated by that Rosetta Stone, which is not properly, it is translated, but it's not properly translated. So
Ra
as
is the Greeks?
No, it is not.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But let me get it. Let me get it.
Go ahead.
Ra is in morph. Ray, when you say Ray, R-E, that's more so in, we're dealing with, right now I'm dealing with the sound and the tone in which you say something, because the importance of language is the connection to one's ancestors, according to the Egyptian Kemetic sciences. So what we as Nuwaubians are seeking is, we're not trying to debunk Medunetta or put a comparison between Medunetta and Nuwaubian. We look at Nuwaubian as a written script and the proper pronunciation. So whereas you have
of the Kemetic
that's what I'm saying, yes.
How could you say that?
I'm trying to explain it.
Easy.
We're basing it off of we're basing it off of the indigenous people that live in the region versus the Caucasians that came in the region in the early 1920s to 1930s, excavated and put things into their perspective, distributed to the world universities, and we as black scholars today had to read their science, then wake up and say, hold up, that shit don't make sense. So we, hold on, almost there, we studying the indigenous people who still live in that region, like the Noba people. The Noba people was termed as nomadic people, meaning they move around. But that's misinformation. How I would know is correct is being the fact that my family, my direct blood, my grandmother and grandfather, cousins over in Sudan, we're the Noba, and they are full Noba, full blood, will tell you, we're not nomadic people. We were attacked everywhere we went when the Caucasians came in, and their history is after their history of their moving around doesn't come into existence until after the Hyksos dynasty, when different Arabs and Syrians and Libyans, etc., came in the country and attacked the darker skinned people, which were the Noba. So they were not nomadic, meaning just running around the place. They were running from war. They were running from being attacked because they were a very small group of people.
Where, though?
They were coming out of the same exact region. They were coming out of the area I explained earlier, known as Nukkada today, right off the bank of the Nile, known as Nukkada, and it's just south of Napata, which is another area that Nuwaubians hold to as one of the ancient places in which our descendancy. We acknowledge that there were many different nationalities. I'm not saying colors of people, brothers and sisters. I'm saying many different nationalities and tribes within Egypt or within Kemet. We acknowledge that, and we identify.
Nationalities within Kemet?
Nationality is the wrong word. I'll say this. Nationality is the wrong word. There's many different tribes that all live and occupy in their united kingdom, right? Their united kingdom brought together as Kemet is, right? This can be proven. This can be proven.
I don't want to squibble on the language, because I think I understand what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say, I think I agree with.
Yes.
I don't know if you necessarily said it the way I would say it, but I hear what you're saying.
But what I'm saying about the Nuwaubian,
different places ended up in Kemet.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm talking about the Noba people. I'm saying the Noba people are of the pre-dynastic. They're of the originators of that region. Okay. The Noba people, as well as many others, and they were pushed out because when you're dealing with dynasties, in most cases, you're dealing with a hostile takeover of another group of people or of people of the same. Yes, because if a dynasty is a family, I'm your son, right? So you pass the kingdom on to me. Sinai's not related. He wants the kingdom. We go to war internally.
That's not usually how it happens.
We go to war internally. Listen.
Not usually how it happens.
Listen, I'm not talking, you said keyword is usually. I'm talking about key times in history. If you let me get to it, I can get to it. We go to war because you've already transitioned. I'm your son. I'm holding the throne. We to go to war, etc. People, etc. Things come in the way. Marriages, all the different ways, and a new bloodline takes over Egypt. Thus, the Egyptians got lighter and lighter and lighter. Even to this day, where some depictions, especially the ones most propagated to the world, are getting light. Even the very ones that you have in your house are the lighter breed, and some of them are false depictions. So I will give you that because the University of Chicago personally went.
What's the picture you see in my house?
I'm not okay. The depictions is.
you about to get me upset.
You don't see.
Said I got white
you don't see.
In my house.
No. I'm saying the lighter breed of Egyptians. It's not that it's false. It's correct in its authenticity. What's incorrect is the fact that it's not constantly described why the Egyptians got lighter, because newer people kept coming in and mixing in, getting into the bloodline of the pharaohs, and the dynasty would change. And in that aspect, now you have foreign rulers. And the original people, such as the Noba people, such as the Nubans, these different indigenous tribes around the surrounding area, they would say, F that, we leaving. Just as many people said, F that. Donald Trump's in office, we going to Canada. And they were dated based on the time they arrived, for example, to Canada, not their birth date. So then,
Canada?
as example, if you were in America and Donald Trump got in office, you said, I don't want to live here. I'm going to move. Yeah. No.
Wait a minute.
I don't want to live here, right? I don't want to live in America because Donald Trump's in office. We're moving to Canada. Instead of dating me historically by my birth date in Kemet, they dated me by the time I got to where I was at, and then the misconstruction. So that tribe of people is known as Nepatans, and they're also in the Arab region now known as Nakata, which was actually termed as Nub, which is gold. And that, birthed the word Nub is also the birth of the word Nuwaubain, Nupu, etc. Our science. So we as Nuwaubians, because once you get a full scope, then you'll get it.
I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
We as Nuwaubians,
to something else. I think
me as Nuwaubians adhold to selected tribes that of the pre-dynastic and proto-dynastic periods of Kemet. We hold to those as being our direct ancestors, and we take full responsibility of our lineage from them. And in that responsibility comes our birthright, as in living our everyday culture. So that birthed the building of everything. Now, I wanted you to show that book because I want to say the script that's on that book is...
What did you want me to show?
Either one. You can use the first one. First one, I see it right on the front.
This one here?
Yes. This script right here is not the Nuwaubic. That's what I'm trying to explain to y'all. This right here, we termed ourselves as Nubic.
Let me see.
Which script are you talking about?
The script right here on the top. This on the side, but the script right here on the top, all of this, that's not Medu-Neter. You agree, right? This is not Medu.
No, it's not Medu-Neter.
Yeah, and that's...
What are you saying?
And I'm saying that's not Nuwaubic. So I'm saying the people, because you come across many people, it's over 4 million Nuwaubians. So you come across many people who may say, I'm a Nuwaubian because they like Dr. York, but they're not necessarily, and they don't know how to speak the proper tones of the language, etc. So only now, speaking to someone like me, who's well learned, and because that's why you wanted to speak with me, who's well learned in the knowledge, you would be able to say, okay, let me hear your dialect of Nuwaubic. So I said, hold on, I'm almost there. I'm at the period.
Okay.
The only way to bridge the gap between Nuwaubic and Medu-Neter is for me and the brother to have a conversation. If I can understand him and he can understand me, clearly we might have different dialect changes, but I'm going to say, how are you to you? You should be able to understand it based on the translation properly. So can we do that? Don't you think that'd be a powerful demonstration for the people? Because I'm fluent. I'm fluent over 6 languages. So we can rock all day. You know what I mean? Garfield already got dagged up. You know what I mean? Stabbed Garfield up. So
here's the deal. I think that I want to be clear that I think that there are some words in the Nuwaubian language that come from the Kemetic language. I think that there are. I'm not saying that.
Actually.
Is it really the majority?
I agree with some that's not because of updates.
I think that it's also possible that you describe some of it as script. And I don't even understand why you would even have a different script if you were going to do that. I mean, dialect and script. I mean, your Kemetic ancestors wrote language and they spoke language. Most of us are not familiar with our ancient language. One of the things that you said is that the Nuwaubic is a proper intonation. is really what he's saying of the meta. I listened carefully, and I think I got an understanding of what he's saying. I don't know how in the world he could make that argument, but I want to say to you that whether we're talking, and I think that you've also given away intonation to the Tamil, to the European. You have to also realize, you said that it was the Greeks and folks like that deciphered the Rosetta Stone that gave us intonation. In actuality, the decipherment of the Rosetta Stone didn't give us intonation. Mm-hmm. The decipherment of the Rosetta Stone gave us transcription. Mm-hmm. This is a difference. Mm-hmm. This is how we were able to read the language. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think that most people who are not familiar with this don't understand the role of Champollion and someone like Thomas Young. I mean, they play different roles. So Thomas Young, for example, is more familiar with the Coptic Church, and I'm going to say Egyptian intentionally here because I'm talking about the modern Coptic Church, right? The Egyptian Coptic Church, they go there. Yeah, right. I'm not talking about our ancient people at all, but they use a form of the Kemetic language, very similar to the Kemetic language in their worship services. I've had a chance to listen to some of it, and it really is very interesting. I would love to be able to go into and listen to an entire service, and we haven't done that yet. So understand that as you look at the way that you guys are not paying attention.
No, paying attention. I hear you.
So basically, as we look at the role that people played in the decipherment and now in trying to figure out how it should sound, they got much of the intonation from the people that are in the churches there today. Right? So it wasn't the Europeans that did it. Right? I think we give them a little bit too much credit. To say that we are trying to figure out new,
like you putting the white man on a pedestal.
as we trying to, that's exact. I'm accusing you of that. I'm accusing, yeah, because one of the things that you've done is you've attempted to say that the intonation that most people are using.
I said the word intonation. He said that, he put that word. I don't even use it.
The pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not talking about just the pronunciation. I never.
You wait. I may use different words. Listen to my sentence. No, I'm not going to use the same because I'm not a tape recorder. I'm a human being. But listen to the sentence and maybe you will agree or disagree. Right? Listen to the. I'm not pretending that I'm giving you a verbatim translation of what you said.
Gotcha.
I'm not able to do that. Okay. Right? For most instances, I listen and I try to come to an understanding. That's what most human beings do. Okay. So my understanding is that you're saying that the Nuwaubain is the proper intonation, the proper pronunciation of the Medu-Neter. And you said, when you say proper, what you're trying to say is the way that people intone, the way that people speak the language is incorrect because the Europeans, through the decipherment of the Rosetta Stone, have given us the way to speak the language. And what I'm trying to explain is that, first of all, the decipherment of the Rosetta Stone did not give us the spoken Kemetic language. It gave us the transcribed Kemetic language. It isn't until a bit later that they begin to listen to individuals speaking in places like the Coptic Church that they begin to say, this might be how it sounds, right? And so that's what actually occurred. Well, you said something different.
What I was more so referring to, I'm making very...
So, but wait, let me finish though. Let me finish. So to say that your intonation is is correct of the language is to deny the reality that the Medu-Neter, even in its transcription, is African. To even develop another script is going against what your ancestors did. To even to go to you showing the things on the screen instead of listening to my point.
No, it's going in there.
But they have to hear the point. That's different. If they see something different, how does that help?
I'm showing them that we're agreeing. That's all I'm doing. And you can look at it, review it.
Brother, yes. If you're going to do that, we have to both see what you're showing. I don't. We could do it downstairs. If you want to do that, we could do that. We could have done. I didn't know that's what you wanted to do.
Let's pause it.
So what I want you to understand is that the concept of the language being an old one is one that I take issue with, and we've beat this one. We're not going to agree on it.
Can you prove that?
Can I prove what?
That the Nuwaubain language is not ancient.
You proved it.
I proved that it is.
No, not at all. You said that even if I took what your father said he did at face value, right? That he actually went to people in the region and composed a language that was based on what people had spoken in the region and created and spoke this language that he calls Nuwaubain. That in and of itself means that it's a new language. You can't take different languages. Let me finish. You cannot take. That doesn't work that way. That's an overly simplistic analysis. You have to understand that those people in the region, while they may have been all one, they diverged at different points. If you just listen to their languages and try to speak something that sounds similar, they just diverge at different points, further down in Africa, further south in Africa, different times. Their languages today also have impact of the other languages of the people that they were near at different times in Africa. You can't just say, I'm going to listen to this brother here, this brother there, and this brother there, and then say, I'm going to try to build something that is close to that. What assumption? Now I'm basing on what you said, brother. So if you do that, it has to be new. Are you telling me that if you spoke Nuwaubain to all of those people in that region now, they would recognize what you were saying?
Yes, and it has been done.
Brother, that's a real... I don't even understand. In the conversation, family, you should understand that Sonetta just asked, he just asked Prince York, he just asked Prince York what the word for money was, and he said garush. That comes from the Kemetic language. Where does that come from?
Okay, as I said before, the Nuwaubain language is, keyword, based upon the Kemetic language. And I said yes, in some cases, yeah, right. In some cases, the master teacher has altered and updated the language for the modern use, such as the use of an ancient language. I'm saying that I've always said this, but you just miss it. I'm saying the origins of those indigenous tribes came from the same place. I'm saying the regions of Napata to Nakata to Hinnis, etc. They were in these regions, and all of them were one tribe, so they spoke one language. And when they spanned out, they have different accents, and the accents grew to dialects. So
those people were one tribe, as you call it.
Huh?
Why do you say that they're one?
They say it. What are you talking about? When you go to the Gambit people, they say we are Noba. When you go down to South Sudan, they say we are no. They all say we are Noba, but they say they migrate. That's why they call nomads. They migrate in different directions, running from the conquering of Egypt or the conquering of whatever nations that was going on in that period. And abandoning it, they went different. You and your family got up and moved this way, but your cousins and them went to Mexico. You went to Canada. So now we're going different directions, but we're the same people.
But and the Noba language is very different than the Kemetic language.
The Noba language is, but the Noba language is in tune with all these other languages, and when compiled, it becomes the same. So it becomes.
Hearing what you're saying.
Just listen.
I think you're agreeing with me, but then when I say we agree, you disagree.
No, I agree with it, but only thing I'm saying is I said let's not say that I agree, but I'm saying the Nuwaubain language is based upon the original language that they speak. So it is ancient in that sense. The only thing that is different is the use of modernized words that we now use today that would not have been used in that time. Now, and in certain cases, some words more so favor another language based on the equivalency of all languages being combined. It's the science of linguistics.
So where do you get the word garush, for example?
The word garush comes from, once again, the Dumgadi tribe calls it gara or guru, which is a term for coin. It's a term for coin referring to some form of currency. So that's where the gara and garush comes from. But it's the study is not us putting it together. The study is us researching it to say, wow, all of these, let's go through a dictionary and let's align 4 languages words together. Let's align the word haru with, let's just align the word haru with hero. Let's align the word netter with nature. Let's align the word hour with Horus, whatever we want to do, and say, there is a correlation. So if we keep going up, we say Horus, if you study Latin or you study Greek, you'll never be able to disagree when you say Horus and these terms are not the proper way. And even some of the terms, some of the terms that I saw on your website, Shrine of My App, I would say, like your name.
Okay.
Pronounce the first part of your name. I want to see how you pronounce it first.
You talking about my name is Heru Jedin Ma'at Atinra.
No,
That's not my name. That's my title.
Pronounce it.
I say Hem. I'm the Hem Netter and Tepi.
See what I'm saying? You see
right.
We agree there. I wanted to hear you say it because some people say ham, some people
wouldn't say ham.
Him, some people say hem. We both say hem, which would be, if you put a vowel there, it would be H-E-M, right?
If I put the vowel, I would put an E.
Exactly. That's the so it's core. It's
But what word are you? But you're just talking about a sound. So what word, if you actually vocalize it as hem, what word would you say that is?
Well, when dealing with the word ham, you're dealing with different levels. One, you have to identify. You have to identify each aspect of the language to truly go in that. And I personally don't necessarily want to go into that direction because I feel like, I feel like my point is going to get lost in it.
Okay.
I just want to.
But this is why I'm asking. And,
but you say
this isn't going to indict what
you say him.
This isn't going to indict.
You say, but listen, you say him. I say him.
But for
you
what?
say, huh?
But for what?
Okay, the purpose, right? That's what I was getting to at first. That you said I was talking too long on. The purpose was alignment with our ancestors. We strongly hold to the fact that our ancestors are able. If you say I'm seeking guidance, I'm praying to my ancestors, any form of ancestral practice or worship, we strongly hold to that based on the tone in which you speak.
What I'm asking.
Okay, go ahead.
And let me say it again, and you'll get it, and then we can dialogue on it. When I say which word are you saying when I say hem? Understand the Kemetic language, generally speaking, does not transcribe many of its vowels, right? It is. It doesn't transcribe many of the vowels. We should protest. We go see us with.
You want to finish that point?
Maybe we should. So the Kemetic language doesn't transcribe many vowels, right? So we insert vowels to be able to speak it.
Indeed.
But I think that it would make sense that
interchangeable sequence.
that's not the linguistic term, by the way.
It's not.
It isn't.
It's not.
That's
It's
something.
that I use.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair then. Okay. Usually, what you're describing is liquids and fricatives. That's what you're describing. That's the linguistic term. So anyway. And those can be used interchangeably. And they're not used interchangeably might give the family the wrong understanding. When different people have access to the same word based on their own social mores and their own languages, sometimes they change the languages.
And disagreeing at the same time.
No. Wait, listen. Because that's a fact. We agree on some of the facts. Listen, let's be clear. We agree. Wait a minute. I'm not finished my comment. Hold on. When we talk about there are things we agree on. Clearly, things we agree on. I'm not saying we disagree on everything we say, but when we talk about the word hem, for example, the reason why I asked you what word would you say it was is because I believe that the Kemetic language would have used different sounds of vowels, different stops in vowels, different intonations of similar vowels in order to actually vocalize different words. So you'll see in the Kemetic language, there are words that seem to be spelled the same exact way, right? Now, sometimes those words are related, which would make sense, and then sometimes the words are radically different.
Yes.
I think that the way that they were able to understand what was being spoken is the actual intonation. And because we're not able to see how they would have intoned or pronounced some of the vowel sounds in between, that's where we have some disagreement, and not even disagreement, some variance, let's call it, on the way that some of the words are spoken. So I say hem, right? But that's just because I've put an E in there. If someone said ham, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them. So that part we don't disagree on. What I'm saying to you is that when I hear the language, even if you want to say garush, I've heard it from a lot of people. I don't think it's fair for me to speak them here.
Here, would you have to X them off and deal directly with me, being the fact that you know that random people.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Let's just deal with words. Maybe this is a way to do it.
I said let's talk.
I'm gonna just get words, right? So if you use the word for ceiling, what word would you use for ceiling?
I don't think I know the word for ceiling.
Okay, that's fair. The word for that's fair. That's gonna be even more difficult because. Okay, so give me a word and let's see if I can figure out what word.
So, for example, to say how are you? I would say okay, ather antat. Can you adhere to that or not at all?
I have no idea what you just said.
How are you?
Yeah, but the terms that you just said, what do you say?
Okay, maybe I should type it. Okay, ather antat. See, most time we're dealing with.
You're suggesting that.
That's how are you?
Okay, I get it. I guess it's how are you in Nuwaubain. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that being that in Nuwaubain. What I'm saying is that it's different than the way it would be rendered in Medunetter. You're trying to say.
Conglomerated and forcibly changed.
Conglomerated. You've conglomerated.
Wrong word. Yeah, I have. I'm saying forcibly.
And when I say you, I'm talking about your dad, your father.
Our nation.
Right. Yes.
The whole.
Yes.
The conglomeration is very much so necessary. The conglomeration is very much so necessary when we indeed, in fact, admit and adhere to that all Africans are coming out of one central location. So when we're saying that, we do you? I don't know if you do, but we adhere to the Nile Valley being the pinnacle of civilization, being the birth, the mother. We do acknowledge that there were existence of humanoids or human beings prior to that. We can go, but we're saying as power structure, as organization, as the okay, almost done. As power structure and as organization, we say that Kemet would be that, Nile Valley would be that place. That was it. That would be it. Now, we had nomadic people and different peoples all over, spread all over the place, and they migrate. As they migrate together, and they became one people, because we say that there's 9 different tribes originally of Africans, but we'll get into that later. And we say that those people in the region of the Nile Valley became unified together to make a unified state, similar to any unified state.
Where'd you get that from?
I can get into that, but that's gonna be a long
too far. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, because then I'll be dealing with all Africa, not Kemetic. Yes, but as far as here, with those people having their own dialects today.
Okay.
Their own languages today, they have been lost in translation. Being at the fact that their words, in some words, I'm not saying everything in Nuwaubic is mirror to Meduneta. I'm saying a lot of Meduneta, I would say in percentages, I would say 75% of Meduneta is mirror to Nuwaubic. The only difference is the script of writing, and the only other difference is the pronunciation. I said 75. The other 25% is of the other indigenous languages, because those people did in fact come out of there. Those people did in fact, and they proclaim that they can.
When you say they are
out of the Nile Valley, the Kemetic region, those people they're still there. In some cases, they're further in the outskirts, but they're still in the region. And those people say, look, these people up here that's translating this is BS. I'm from there. But we can't go talk to them directly because we don't speak their language. The master teacher went to the University of Khartoum. So when he went to the University of Khartoum, his study was linguistics. And he learned all the different forms of Arabic, allowing him to be able to speak directly to the bilingual tribes in the area. And they said, no, Arabic's not our native language. Our native language is this. It is this. It is this. Before the use of research, computers, and Google, we're talking about the 1960s, where it was only encyclopedias. You know what I'm saying? And while being there, he learned their dialects. And he even became a translator from tribe to tribe. And in his studies, for numerous of years down there, and I had the pictures of him with all the different elders. He was in his mid-20s, around my age. And in that study, we'll end it after this point. And in that study, he came to the conclusion that, wow, all of these languages are the same. The people agreed, yes, those are our people. They're just distant. Like you said, yeah, I got family in South Carolina, and yeah, I got family in Georgia too. So with that same exact concept, people, and their language is the same, but accents became dialects, and dialects became separate language. So the master teacher sought to unify the dialects to bring it back to its original form. And then once get into its original form, then we updated it and added things. And at the point, at the point of adding something to it, you could say new. That's when the word new can come into. But prior to that, you can't say new. So here's the period. The Nuwaubic language is based on ancient and pre-dynastic Nile Valley languages. Let's pause it right there and go to this downstairs, because I have the presentation. We live right here in the brother Jabari's house. So now to get a close up of this, right? Jabari running. He's like, you see this right here? This right here is coming out of some part of Jabari. I don't think he told me what part of Africa yet, but it's coming out of Africa. Utilizing my eyes, not the Caucasian studies, not the university studies, just my eyes. I would look at this as someone who studies Egypt and say, this is a sun disk. Yeah, with a different appearance. This may even be some form of beak to a bird, which will tie you back to Haru. Right? Now get this. Now get this right here. Don't think about the white man. Remove the white man from your... Now look at this. I would deem these things very much similar, to the point we're coming out of similar cultures. So what Nuwaubians did is we studied those cultures of the Nile Valley and unified them. So instead of having the Cushites, the Hamites, the Kemetites, the this and this, we brought them together and said we were out of Napata, which is Naputu, or Nakata, which is really Noob, which is gold, NWB or NBW, which can also be termed, once adding the vowels, as Nu, Woo, Boo. And that's how we became Nuwaubians. And the language, Jabari is correct. The language is new and old in a sense. It's based on the ancient language that they all spoke, which we say is not Medu Neter. We adhere to Medu Neter as the point of reference, but we say it's not Medu Neter based on the single fact that Medu Neter has been tampered and altered and controlled by the Caucasian. Now, me, I deal with black organizations. From my perspective, it seems that Brother Jabari is dealing with all knowledge. I do not. I adhere to our scholars, I study their scholars, and I utilize right knowledge, right wisdom, and right understanding to come to logical conclusions. Just because the white man put it in a book and said, this is from this tribe, and he's telling you about you, does not mean I agree. I'm going to utilize my sound right reasoning, look at things for myself, and come to a logistic conclusion. So the presentation that I'm about to present is going to be based upon that. So y'all, not, because I'm not trying to make nobody Nuwaubain, because we're not a religion, so I don't have no soul count, no necessary people I got to save. You be Nuwaubain if you want to be, or not. We're going to be working regardless. We're going to survive regardless. As Brother Jabari told you, he been knowing us since the 80s. We still here. We was the baddest shit on the street in the 80s. I know you better have hold of that one. We was the baddest shit on the street in the 80s. We demolished anybody in debate. We still do. Sinetta knows it. I mean, you put my brother Pharaoh up, and Pharaoh had them shooken.